Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. So in this video we're going to be doing our ultimate tier list for the Necrons index for 10th edition. So of course we've had our index launch from the start of 10th edition I guess. We're going to be going through virtually every single unit in this video, so it might be quite a long video. There will be timestamps in the bottom of the screen anyway, so if you want to skip forward to certain units you can do so. Now the way this system is going to work, we've got D tier, which is the worst tier. We have then got C tier, B tier, A tier, all the way up to S tier, which is the best tier we've got. Now in the actual tier groups, I'm not gonna sort of put them in order. I'm just gonna alphabeticalize them, but they will be in certain tiers. So let's get on to the first tier group, which is D tier. So these are the worst options, I believe, in the Necrons index. Now of course this is just my opinion guys, by the way. This is a little bit of a disclaimer. Everyone's got their own playstyle, everyone's got their own opinions. This is just mine, but I'm happy for you to share yours in the comments down below. Right, where were we? D tier. The first one I'm going to talk to you about today is the Canoptic Stalker. Now not necessarily the worst unit in the index, because as I mentioned already, they are alphabeticalized. But the Canoptic Tomb Stalker is 130 points and it's a Forge World model, so you've got to instantly take away points for that. It's Forge World. Yes, it has got some uses. Yes, it's got an in-1 save and toughness 9 and all that stuff. Pretty quick, deep strike. You're also heroically intervening for 0 command points. That's all great stuff. But in terms of the actual damage department, the Gore Slicers aren't doing much with 8 attacks hitting on a 4+. Instantly you're losing 4 of those dice just because of the actual ballistic skill. And the melee weapons are nicer. They are damage 2 at strength 6, -1 AP, 2 damage. But realistically you've got better choices in the index, so that's why the Canoptic Tomb Stalkers are going to be in D tier. The second unit in the D tier unfortunately is going to be the Fortification. It's the Convergence of Dominion, and the reason for this is it's now 255 points. It's an absolute arm and a leg, and yeah, you're realistically never going to take this Fortification unfortunately. Back in 9th edition it was pretty solid, it was pretty cheap for what it could do, an anti-deep strike screen if you like. There were 3, well there is still 3 models. They have toughness 11, which does help. They're not really doing much. Yes, you've got damage 3 with a fair amount of shots. Yes, you get to re-roll your reanimation protocols when you're near it, so there is a bit of a defense mechanism to the Conversion of Dominion, but realistically that's 255 points. If you're playing 1,000 points, that's a quarter of your list. If you're playing a 2k game, you've just got better options to screen off enemy units in my opinion. You could just use Canoptic Scab Swarms. You could use a single Locust Destroyer if you really wanted to go down that avenue. Okay, that isn't toughness 11, but you could hide them I guess. But for me, they're just not a feasible option at this moment in time. Next into the D tier, we've got one of the flyers, and it's the Night Scythe. 145 points for basically a flying transport, which is going to get 1 Necron's infantry unit into the battle. Now that's unfortunate because in 9th edition it just had a capacity of X amount of models. It now has 1 Necron's infantry unit. So that could be a full unit of Necron warriors. It could be a single Hexmark destroyer. I mean, you're not going to do that obviously, but you're now limited to just 1 unit. The actual damage output is pretty poor. It's okay, but there's just way better options in the index. And the ability that it comes with the translocation beams, where you can slip a unit back into the flyer, I think it's extremely situational. And yes, the actual flying transport does get models into play, into the right location I suppose, but you've got a Necron Monolith that can do stuff like that. You've got the Veil of Darkness that can do stuff like that. And then if you're trying to do it for scoring, you've got things like Ophidian Destroyers that can keep popping in and out. You've got lots of deep strike options now. The Praetorians are an example, Death Marks. I just don't see a need for this transport flyer at this current time. On to the next one. One of my favourites of 9th edition, or towards the end of 9th edition, is the Necron Obelisk. Now the Obelisk got really good towards the end. I didn't convince everybody, but quite a few of you started to actually take my advice, put it into a game and play it, and you were actually quite surprised. But now it is absolutely garbage. Unfortunately this model is 325 points. And it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. Okay, yes, it's tanky. It's moving 7 inches. It's got the toughness 14, 2+ armor, 22 wounds. You know, it's resilient as heck. It's got deep strike as well. And the 4 Tesla spheres, which are effectively 24 shots. Anti-fly 4+, sustain hits 2. Yeah, it's doing a little bit of work. but not quite like it used to in 9th edition. You used to be able to up the damage, up the amount of shots and all sorts of jazz. My will be done in 9th edition. It used to be an absolute menace of a model, but now really it's just an anti-fly option, if you like. The Gravitic Pulse, I don't really rate it anyway. Yes, you can be throwing out mortal wounds. Yes, you can slow your opponent's units down, but you're paying 325 points to do that. And yeah, for me, it is just not going anywhere. Next in the D tier, we've got the Psychomancer. Now, I really thought the Psychomancer was going to shape up this edition. I was actually putting it in my predictions pre-edition, and it just doesn't seem to have happened. Now, granted, he is only 50 points, but you literally have no reason to take him over any of the other characters that we've actually got. When you're competing for spots with the Technomancer, Orokin the Diviner, Plasmancers, Chronomancers, even your standard like Necron Lords, Overlords, they're just never going to see a game at all, really. The damage department doesn't really exist. We've got that one shot. Yes, it is damage 3, but one shot with it, you're not doing anything there. There's no invulnerable save. Toughness 4. 4 up armor save. The Nightmare Shroud is only a 9-inch aura, and it's only effective leadership, which only then affects Battle Shock, which kind of isn't that important anyway at this moment in time. And the Harbinger of Despair ability, where you're forcing Battle Shock. Again, who cares, right? I mean, it just doesn't seem that big of a deal, especially when you're taking the place of something like a Technomancer. So for that reason, the Psychomancer is also going to be in D tier. Next, we've got the Tesseract Bolts. Now, in my review that we did, I probably gave it a little bit of a bump up. I thought it was slightly better than it was. I'm going to get things slightly wrong, and obviously the more you experience certain models in 10th edition, the more you get to analyse them and review them much more clearer. But for me, the Tesseract Bolt is going to be in D tier, and this is why. So we've got a model that is 425 points, so it's an absolute insane amount of points, and it's not doing an incredible amount of work here. I mean, the Catan powers, they are nice, but you can't use them in Overwatch, which kind of sucks. So for example, the Cosmic Fire, which is a torrent, you would love to use that in Overwatch, wouldn't you? 3d6 hits effectively, strength 6 minus 2 AP, 1 damage, devastating wounds. You'd love to use that in Overwatch, but you can't, because the powers of the Catan ability only happen in the shooting phase, and they end at that phase. So therefore, you don't have them in your opponent's charge phase or your opponent's movement phase. The Tesla Spheres, very similar to the Obelisk, and it's not really doing much in terms of melee output, so really it's just not doing anything for that kind of points cost. You could literally get 9 Locust Heavy Destroyers for the same amount of points, and that's going to do way more work than the Tesseract Bolt ever could. On to the last unit that I've selected for the D tier, and unfortunately it's going to be one of the named characters and probably one of the coolest characters in terms of the lore, but not so much in terms of gameplay, and it's Trazyn the Infinite. Now, this 75 point Necron Noble is effectively going to be in place of your Necron Overlord, potentially just a Necron Lord if you're going cheaper. Doesn't have a Resurrection Orb, has all the other stats that are going to match an Overlord, but yeah, no Resurrection Orb. You're not customizing the weaponry. You've got no My Will Be Done with the free stratagem use. And the actual abilities that he does come stock with, well, one of them is okay. It's when you've got sticky objectives. I quite like that. That's not the worst one, but I don't think we struggle with that kind of thing, especially if you're ploughing out loads of Necron Warriors as an example. I don't think we struggle. But the Surrogate Host ability, I've never liked it throughout all the editions. It's basically where you're removing a Necron's infantry character from the tabletop because Trazyn the Infinite has messed up and died, and he's basically taking the place. It can't be a Scorbit Lord or an Epic Hero, but if you've got, say, a Hexmark Destroyer, you swap him out for Trazyn the Infinite, but now your Hexmark Destroyer is dead. So, you know, the whole point of having that Hexmark Destroyer there is you've got a reason for that. So now that you've just destroyed one model for another model that isn't going to be in the unit that he was in, if that makes any sense, I don't like that. And I think it's a pretty poor ability. It's got the cool factor, but in terms of actual play, it's poor. So yeah, that's the last option I've got for the D tier, Trazyn the Infinite. So that's my D tier. We're now going to go into the C tier. There's quite a lot of units here. There's quite a long list. So let's go through all these together. The first one on the list is the Annihilation Barge. The Annihilation Barge is 115 points per model. You do have the option of the actual ranged weapons, which is, you know, that's a little bonus, I suppose, but none of them are doing a massive amount of work. And the actual ability, Malevolent Arcing, yeah, it's okay. But it is happening for units within 3 inches, and then you've got the 5+ roll to make before you even start doing any mortal wounds, so it might not even happen. It's only toughness 8, it's only got 9 wounds, it's got a 4+ invulnerable save at least, but I just don't see a need to take it. I'd rather be putting my points into things that can actually score and score well, whether it's your Tomb Blades, whether it's your Athenian Destroyers, maybe it's your Death Marks. I think we just got better options, and if you're talking about the actual damage department, again, you'd go towards the Locust Heavy Destroyers, the Doomsday Arc, the standard Locust Destroyers, they're the shooty kind of units. For me, you just don't need an Annihilation Barge, but it's not, I don't think it's bad enough to go into D tier, simply because you could use it to score some objectives, you could use it to go engage on all fronts, you could use it to deploy teleport homers, you're foregoing your shooting, but because it's quite a semi-resilient model with toughness 8, 3+ armor save, 9 wounds with a 4+ invulnerable save, it's fairly resilient-ish. So it could get to, you know, behind enemy lines and start doing stuff. Investigate Signal is another one, without your opponent actually, you know, picking it off. Maybe, I don't know, there's some Overwatch going off, and if you had a unit of Death Marks that have come in and your opponent Overwatches, then you sometimes could actually just lose the unit before you've even done Investigate Signals, perhaps. So at least the Annihilation Barge has a little bit of tankiness, and that's why I put it in C tier. Next in the C tier, it's one of the Forge World units, it's the Canoptic Acanthrites. Now the Acanthrites are 85 points for 3 or 170 points for 6. I mean, a min unit of 3 is fairly cheap. I don't think I'd want to max out with them a 6-man unit. The problem they've got though is, again, they're hitting on 4s. I mean, all the Canoptic stuff is as well, but you've now got the range attacks. You've got the cutting beams, which are Melter 2. They're only 12-inch range, so you need to get close, of course. And if you've got a 3-man team, that's only 3 shots, and you're hitting on 4s. So therefore, 1 or 2 shots on average are going to go through. The damage is D6, but with Melter 2, so that's not too bad. The Void Blade is okay, but it's only 3 attacks each. Again, if you've got a 3-man unit, hitting on 4s again. Now there are ways of like actually buffing the unit to hit on 3s, but you're then going to need the Sovereign Coronal, you're then going to need a character that can keep up with these guys. Bearing in mind these have also got the Infiltrators keyword, or core keyword, so therefore they could start on the board in a different location, whereas our characters aren't really going to do that. Maybe a Hexpart Destroyer can meet them there in a certain location, then give the Sovereign Coronal aura for the +1 to the hit rolls, but now you're talking more points, and that's when it becomes a problem. When you're talking about 85 points for 3, that's okay, but when you're now having to add a character and an enhancement on top of that just to get them going, that's when it becomes a problem for me. Now the actual ability, I don't even rate that much anyway. You're getting an extra bit of AP on critical wounds. Again, when you've got 3 shots, potentially 6 shots if you go with a full man, not really a great ability at all, and it's Forge World, so that's why they're in C. They can do, if you get a turn 1 for example, in fact this is why they're in C. If you can get turn 1 and you're infiltrated, you're quite close to your opponent's deployment zone 9 inches away or just over 9 inches away, they can move 12 inches. If you've got a full team of these, you can pop 6 cut and beam melter shots onto a vehicle, charge into another unit. Yes, you're probably going to lose your unit on your opponent's turn, but you could literally do a lot of damage with that. But on the flip side of that, if your opponent goes first and you've left these out in the open with infiltrators, then they're dead. So it's really risky, and that's why they're a C. Moving down the list, we've got the Canoptic Spider. The Canoptic Spider, 75 points for 1 or 2 is 150 points. You'll no longer take them in units of 3 anymore, and they're pretty much there just to make you get more Scarabs. You're bringing back Scarab Swarms with the Canoptic Swarm ability. If one of your spiders costs you 75 points, and a unit of 3 Canoptic Scarab Swarms is costing you 40 points, you can almost get 6 there for the same price. And if the Canoptic Spiders are bringing 1 back per turn, that would be a maximum of 5. Very unlikely that you do every single battle round. But even if you did, you're probably better off just taking 2 units of Scarabs rather than the Spider, if you're just purely looking at that ability alone. Now of course, the actual Spider itself is its own separate unit. It's got ranged weapons with the particle beamers. They're okay, they've got blast, devastating wounds. D6 per beamer. You're having 2 of these beamers, don't forget. They're strength 6 but no AP, 1 damage, and in melee they're not too bad with 5 attacks each. The likelihood is you've only got 1 of these, so that will be just 5 attacks. Strength 8 minus 2 AP, 2 damage is okay. Now the War Gear abilities is what gives it a little bit of a bump up in the C tier department, if you like. The Fabricated Claw Array for the 6+ Fear No Pain save for vehicles, and the Gloom Prism for the 4+ Fear No Pain save for any units that are getting targeted by psychic attack. So that gives you a little bit more resiliency for units nearby, but realistically I'm not that keen on the spiders at this moment in time, and I think the scarabs, the fact that we can't take scarabs in units of 9 anymore, that's another kind of little bit of a flaw for the spiders. We can't take scarabs in 9s anymore, we're only taking them in 6s, if you do take them in 6s. So therefore, they kind of do just disappear if they are targeted, and therefore your spider isn't going to be bringing one back. Next we've got another Canoptic unit, we've got the Canoptic Tomb Sentinel. So another one of those centipede models, it's another Forge World model unfortunately. This one I think is the better option. It's 115 points. There was a little bit of and ahhing in the Discord about this one. I have yielded to putting it into C tier. I did have it in D tier, but we'll go through why it's been bumped up to C tier. So it's got the same resiliency as the Tombstalker. It's got T9, 3+ armor, 4+ invuln, 9 wounds. It's got all that jazz. That's okay. Deep Strike as well on top of that, and the Gloom Prism, which I think we missed out in the Tombstalkers section. But really it's about the weapon and the ability. So the weapon is the Exile Cannon. It's strength 10, minus 2 AP, 2 damage with D6 plus 1 attacks, and it's got Blast as well. I think Blast does help it quite a lot. The problem with this is the melee side of the data card is pretty poor. No AP, 1 damage. So you don't want to get too close, you don't want to get it into engagement range, but the actual cannon is only 18-inch range. So therefore you do need to get a little bit close. And with Deep Strike as well, you probably are going to get a bit close if you're using Deep Strike. So it's a little bit of a, do I go close, do I not go close? It's kind of one of them vibes. The ability is actually okay. If you're targeting a unit that's within range of an objective marker, then you're going to be worsening that unit's AP by 1, and also you're going to be strengthening our AP by 1, which could mean our Exile Cannons go to minus 3 AP. I mean, it is a perfect Space Marine killer. It's just a shame that it's Ballistic Skill 4+. That's the only downside to it. So if you roll poorly on the amount of shots, let's say you roll a 2, that's 2 plus 1 because it's +1 for the attacks. 3 shots plus Blast as well, you might get 4 shots. Because the Ballistic Skill is a 4+, it goes back down to 2 on average. Strength 10, you're wounded on 2s, minus 2 AP, 2 damage. You're probably killing a couple of Space Marines if you roll that kind of figure. So they're okay, that's why they're in C. If you do roll highly for the amount of attacks, of course, you could be wiping out a unit. So it is swings and roundabouts, it all depends on what you roll for that janky D6 plus 1 attacks roll. The next one is one of our characters, is the Catacomb Command Barge. This also got a bit fiery in the Discord, and I don't like the Command Barge this edition. Last edition I loved the Command Barge, one of my favourite units to use. This edition I'm not that keen, and there's quite a few reasons. First of all, it's 150 points, so it's quite expensive. It's quite a pricey boy. The second reason is the fact that we've lost Lookout Sir this edition. We've now been given leaders with our characters, but unfortunately the Command Barge does not lead any units, so hiding him is quite difficult. He can be targeted literally from turn 1. Now he does have resiliency to kind of counteract that. He's got T8, 3+ armor, 4+ invuln, 9 wounds. He's also got the advanced quantum shielding, which is effectively a -1 to the wound roll for anything that is strength 9 or more. So that virtually puts it on, you need force to wound him, unless you're talking about strength 16 and stuff like that. That's when it's a little bit different. But I just don't like the fact that he can be targeted. Now you could put the Semiternal Weave on him, but I'm probably saving that for my Transcendent Catan. But this is an option. Now the only reason I would think about that is if I wanted to not use the Catan and I wanted some sort of throw in your face kind of beat stick kind of unit. But I think we've got other options to do that. I mean, like I said, the Transcendent Catan does that way better. You could even look at the Scorpec Lord. There are other options that could do that kind of role as a lone beat stick kind of model. The Command Barge, the damage output isn't that great. The Overlord's Blade has only got 4 attacks. The Staff of Light has only got 4 attacks. And then the Undersling Weapon, Gauss Cannon, Tesla Cannon, yeah, whatever, right? They're not exactly tearing up trees. So really, you're not looking at the damage, you're looking more at the fact that this is going to be buffing our units, and there's two things that it's going to be doing in terms of buffs, which is kind of giving it the C tier for me. The first one, +1 to our objective control for units within 6 inches. And the other one is the Resurrection Orb for infantry and mounted units within 6 inches. Now both of those relate to units that are not as meta, if you like. For example, Canoptic Wraiths. Canoptic Wraiths of course don't have any leaders, but if you're taking a command barge alongside the Wraiths, then they could be using the objective control ability to get +1 to their OC, because you're not going to really need to up the OC of say Necron Warriors, you're not going to need to up the OC of Lich Guard, you're not going to need to up the OC of Immortals. They don't really need it. And as for the actual Resurrection Orb, again, if you're looking at Immortals, Lich Guard, Warriors, the likelihood is you've got an orb in the unit. Even in fact Locust Destroyers and Locust Heavy Destroyers, they could take a Locust Lord with the Resurrection Orb as well. So there's ways of getting orbs into your key units without actually having a command barge. So really, it's only things like what? Death Marks, Flayed Ones, Tomb Blades potentially. They're the only options that you're going to use this Resurrection Orb ability on from the command barge. And for 150 points, I just think he's just a little bit pricey for what he does. I'm not saying he's bad, I just think he's nowhere near as good as he used to be, and there are much better options currently. Right, moving down the C tier, we've got the Catan Shard of the Deceiver. Now, the Catan Shard of the Deceiver is 265 points. Now, I've got nothing against the Deceiver. I quite like the Deceiver. It's just that we've got other Catan Shards that we're definitely going to be taking over the Deceiver. The Nightbringer, which isn't even that great this edition in my opinion. The Void Dragon, that's another one. You've got the Transcendent Catan, which is virtually an auto-include now. So when is the Deceiver ever going to get played for that kind of points cost? He's still got all the same stats that all the other Catans have. He's okay in terms of damage output. I mean, the Cosmic Insanity is decent. I mean, it's got the Precision ability, anti-character 4+. It's only 6 attacks, so it's doing a little bit of work against characters. And the melee weapon, Golden Fists, that's okay as well. The damage 3, they're okay. The ability is probably where a lot of people like to look at this thing when you're basically redeploying your units. It's going to be 3 Necron units. You can either put them in strategic reserves or just redeploy them. That's probably the main reason for taking the Deceiver realistically. And of course the resiliency of the model. You've got that 4+ armor save or in-run save, toughness 11, 12 wounds, and you're halving damage with the Necrodermis. But all the Catans do that. But what you need to also remember is this is an epic hero, just like the Nightbringer and the Void Dragon, so therefore you will not be putting any enhancements on these guys. Whereas with the Transcendent Catan Shard, you get the Septurnal Weave because he's not an epic hero, and that's a 4+ Vilna Pain save on top. So that's why he's the lowest ranked Catan Shard in my opinion. Well, unless you're including the Vault, but I'm not. Just for these sort of monster models, for me, it's the lowest one. Still not worthy of a D tier though. You could argue it because you're probably not going to ever select him. But if you did select him, he's not going to do you bad. He's not going to be an awful unit to use. He's still going to be pretty good. So that's why he's just up into C. Next, we've got the second flyer within the Necrons Index, and it's a Doom Scythe. So the Doom Scythe is 225 points, which I think is the actual problem with the Doom Scythe. Because as far as actual damage goes, it's actually decent. I mean, it's got the Heavy Death Ray, Sustained Hits D3, 3 attacks, Strength 16, -4 AP, D6 +1 damage. You've got the Twin Tesla Destructors. And even the Atavistic Instigation ability isn't actually that bad. I know in the 9th edition it was a stratagem and it was slightly worded differently. It was pretty poor back then. But this edition, when you're targeting an infantry unit with a Heavy Death Ray, they get to either stand firm or duck for cover. And if they stand firm, all of a sudden 5+ rolls against that unit are now critical hits, just purely for that phase alone. That could be pretty good. You're virtually having a Plasmancer almost on all your units now against only that unit. And of course, if they duck for cover, they're going to get a -1 to their hit rolls virtually for an entire turn. So you could select a decent target that really relies on hitting, or maybe they're already hitting on a 4+ and you put them to a 5+. So that ability is okay. It's pretty decent. Damage department is decent. It's not got an in-run save. It's not got the -1 to hit them anymore. But like I said at the start of this part, the real problem is 225 points. Again, you could just look at your Locust Heavy Destroyers, your Doomsday Arcs, even your Monolith. You can look at units that are doing much more work and have just much more. I mean, the Monolith may be a bad example because that will actually cost you more, but there you're getting 4 Heavy Death Rays, and a lot more resiliency, as well as some other shenanigans with your movement. So for me, that one's a C tier option at this moment in time. Next, we've got another epic hero, one of the named characters. It's Nemesis Andrek. Now, Nemesis Andrek is only 85 points, and he's got some pretty cool abilities. In terms of actual damage, he's not doing anything. He's not got a resurrection orb, but the ability itself, Transient Madness, it's pretty useful for example, a unit of Lich Guard with the swords and shields, because you're either giving them sustained hits 1, lethal hits, or devastating wounds. You're going to get one of those abilities, and the Lich Guard with the sword and shields don't have any of them. If you are using him with a different unit, such as warriors, you are running the risk of rolling for lethal hits, which they already have. Or if you're using Lich Guard with the War Scythes, you're running the risk of getting devastating wounds again. Or Tesla Immortals as an example, with sustained hits 1. So you're running the risk with some units, well most units really, but the Lich Guard with the swords and shields, there's no bad option. His other ability is actually pretty good counter tactic, so you're going to be increasing the costs of your opponent's CP by 1, which I think is a really good ability this edition. It's really strong. The problem I've got with Nemesis Andrek is, well, there's two problems. First of all, he's going to be replacing your Noble, so he's going to be replacing your Overlord in a unit. Your Overlord's got My Will Be Done, so he's going to be getting a free strat use anyway. You've got the customization, you've got the enhancements, you've got the actual melee weapon or the ranged weapon that you can change out, and of course the Resurrection Orb, which is one of the key parts of one of these noble models. The second problem I've got with him is his partner in crime, which we've not got onto yet. We'll get onto him in a moment. His abilities are more effective when you pair them together, but the other guy, Vargard Oberon, well, he's going to be taking over the spot of either one of the Cryptex, Royal Warden, or Orokin the Diviner. Well, I mean that's a Cryptek, but he's going to be taking those. Are you going to be selecting these models over the Overlords and the Technomancers and Orokins and all that kind of stuff? The answer is simply no, you're not. You're really not. But if you, again, very similar to the Katana Shard of the Deceiver, if you were to take Nemesis Andrek with a Sword and Shield Lich Guard unit, he's going to do you good. He's not going to be bad, you've just got better options. That's all it really is. And it's quite a nice problem to have for Necron players. We've not got awful options. I mean, we've got Traz in the Infinite, but we've not got super awful. Like, we've got some decent options, but we've just got some better options, which makes the decent options not as good. But I'm sure we're going to discuss him because the last one of the C tier is actually Vargard Oberon, so we're probably going to come back to that. The next one we've got is the Skorpek Destroyers. Now they've definitely taken a fall from grace this edition. 110 points for 3, 220 points for 6. That will include the plasma sights, which aren't actually models anymore, which really stuck. That stinks for me. You're now just gaining an ability. But these guys, why they're in C tier? Why are the Skorpek Destroyers in C tier when in 9th edition they were virtually an S tier kind of unit? Well, very simply, it's what they can do and who they can go with. In 9th edition, you could pair them up with a Chronomancer, give them the invulnerable save. When they run into a fight, they're fairly resilient. They're re-rolling the charge roll, so they're almost likely to get in, and then the invuln save again. For the resiliency, we can't have that anymore. The only option we've got is the Skorpek Lord, which in itself isn't a great option. We'll talk about him in a moment as well. They've actually dulled down the weapons for the Skorpek Destroyers, the Skorpek Hyperphase weapons. They've now just merged them into one weapon. You've not got the Reap Blades anymore. You've got the sort of a combination of the Reap Blades and the Threshers, which are now only minus 2 AP damage 2. You're lightly wounded on 3s because it's strength 7. The ability itself, Whirling Onslaught, is pretty poo. I mean, you're not going to be able to modify our weapon skill or our hit rolls, so we are hitting on 3s or 2s with the Coronal or with the Skorpek Lord. And the Plasma Sight can add devastating wounds for a phase once or twice per game, depending on the unit size. I just think they're not doing a lot. They used to be great anti-tank options for going up to tanks and slicing them open. Vehicles and monsters this edition have gone up in terms of their toughness and resiliency. They've gone to toughness 9, toughness 10, toughness 11, right up to 14 in fact, for Necrons anyway. And the strength of our Skorpek Destroyers didn't match it. It didn't go up with that toughness. It actually just stayed on strength 7. You could push it to strength 8 with the Protocol of Hungry Void potentially, but that's still going to be wounding on 5s against the models that it used to do the damage to. So now really they're just kind of glorified Space Marine Intercessor killers, but you're paying the taxes for strength 7 when you don't really need it. Strength 7, like I said, you're pretty much always wounded on 3s. I just think they're nowhere near as good as they used to be. Going down the list, we've got the leader, we've got the Scorpec Lord. We may as well jump straight into this guy. The Scorpec Lord is 115 points. So almost the same price of having three Scorpec Destroyers is 5 points cheaper than having an actual Lord. So I'll let you do the maths on that. What is better? Is it better to have the Scorpec Lord with the +1 to the hit roll as well as the lethal hits ability? Or is it better just to have 3 more Scorpec Destroyers in a larger unit, or 3 more separate? Up to you, I suppose. But the Scorpec Lord, I don't rate him. He gives lethal hits. It's a kind of counterproductivity, if that is the right word. It kind of counteracts, in a way, the Scorpec Destroyer's ability of gaining devastating wounds with a plasma sight. Because if you score a 6 to hit with lethal hits for the unit, that means you're not going to be rolling to wound. So therefore, you're not going to be able to get a devastating wound with your Scorpec Destroyers. So they kind of don't go hand in hand with each other, which is a little bit odd. Now, I do like the Crimson Harvest ability it has, which is when you end your charge move, you can basically deal out mortal wounds. You're going to be doing D3 or D3 plus 3, depending on what you roll. I think that's pretty decent. He's a character, so you could stick on, say, for example, the Veil of Darkness relic. You could even go as far as putting the Sempiternal Weave on him and going solo. Don't worry about the Destroyers, just go solo with him. He's got the 4+ invulnerable save, the 4+ feel no pain save with the enhancement. Toughness 7, 6 wounds, 3 armor, 4+ invuln. He can do a bit of work. In terms of damage, he's not bad. The Flensing Claw is the anti-infantry option with 8 attacks, strength 6. Or the Hyperphase Harvester, strength 10, -3 AP, 3 damage. But you've only got 4 attacks. That's the problem I've got. It's only 4 attacks. Why don't our characters have slightly more attacks? I don't know. He does have a ranged weapon as well, I guess. But even that is only 2 attacks, rapid fire 4 attacks. The damage isn't massive. And that's why he's only at C tier for me. Going down the list, we've got another one of the Forge World units. It's the Tesseract Arc. Now, the Tesseract Arc is 130 points. Now, I quite liked it in the previous edition, although it was quite expensive. But 130 points does seem reasonable, but there are a few flaws to this data card. Now, it's fairly resilient. It's got the 3+, 4+. It's got 10 wounds, toughness 9 on top of that. And the gravitational field, so you can slow down units' charge moves to prevent them from getting into engagement range of your units, I suppose. Now, the weapons is really what this unit is about. The Tesseract Arc's got the Tesseract Singularity Chamber. That's the first one. Now, this used to be 3 different profiles in 9th edition. It's now only 2. And the profiles it has, you've either got the Torrent one, which is only 12-inch range, D6 plus 3 attacks that automatically hit, strength 6 -1 AP, 2 damage. 2 damage is decent for that kind of weapon. You could use it on Overwatch. So it's a really good option for your Overwatch, in fact, because you're auto hitting. There's no rolling for it. And 2 damage could potentially do a bit of work on Space Marines, for example. I always go to them, although the meta is more the Terminators and stuff. In fact, that is a flaw to that weapon, because Terminators, wounds 3, wounds 4, Custodes, anything that's got 3 wounds or more, this is going to struggle with. Now, the other option, which is the Seismic Lash, is strength 9. It's effectively like a little las cannon, really. You've got D3 amount of shots, which I don't like. It does have blast, though, so that does assist you somewhat. Strength 9, I just think, is a bit of a funny number, because you're not going to be... You only need strength 8 against toughness 4 to be wounding on 2s. As soon as it goes to toughness 5, you're not going to be wounding on 2s, because you need strength 10 for that. So strength 9 has always been a weird number for me. It's only really useful against toughness 8 and toughness 9 to be wounding slightly better. But then you're not gaining the blast ability in that manner. So there's always some sort of little flaw to these weapons. D6 plus 1 damage is okay as well. You never know what you're going to get with D6 plus 1, but it is what it is. You're then adding on the Gauss Cannon, Particle Beamer, or Tesla Carbine. So you've got the option there. All 3 of them have their own different unique abilities. You've got lethal hits on one of them, dev wounds on the other one, with blast, or sustain hits too on the Tesla, of course. But for 130 points, for 5 points more in fact, you can get 3 Locus of Destroyers with the Gauss Destructors if you wanted, or the Exterminators, whatever you fancied. You could potentially look at a Doomsday Arc, which is 50 points more, although they do need to realistically stay stationary to be the most effective. But we've also got to come back to the fact that this is Forge World after all, and Forge World is an absolute robbery in terms of our finances. Next one, this one may be a little bit of a shocker, or maybe not, I don't know. 9th edition, this guy used to be an absolute king, the Silent King in fact. This edition, I think he's not that great. He's okay, but you've just got a million better options. So let's get into it. So this is a 470 point model. Just bear that in mind throughout this entire part here, because 470 points, that's literally going to be a quarter, just under a quarter of your 2k list on this one unit. Now, thankfully they did rectify the changes with the actual Deadly Demise. You're not going to be blowing up Minears and then bringing them back and then blowing up again into your own unit. Thankfully, it's only the Silent King that goes bang. Let's talk about the good to begin with. What is the good of this data card? Well, he's doing sort of a lot of stuff. He's like a Swiss Army knife. He can shoot, he can fight. I mean, the Annihilation Beams, the Strength 14 with damage 6. You've only got 2 shots with them, and that's if your 2 Tricomineers are up and running. They do hit on 2s, which is nice. The other 2 range attacks, well, one of them is only 2 shots again, so it's like you're doing pop shots. Strength 10 minus 3 AP 3 damage. Again, that is good, and it's devastating wounds, but with 2 shots, you can't really count on the 6 to come up. It might come up every now and then. Hey, if it comes up, it comes up. And the Staff of Stars for 12 shots, but that's the anti-infantry weapon. The melee weapon, the Scythe of Dust, you got your 12 attacks with lethal hits. That's okay, but it's only damage 2, so you're only really looking at doing the intercessors in. There's nothing more than that. There's no damage 3, there's no damage 4. The melee side of the data card isn't actually that strong. But really, he's all about the abilities, isn't he? He's got the voice of the Triarch, so he can take one of those Triarch abilities. And I think this is in fact where the main reason you would ever take him. It's for the Fair Enough Stars Aura ability, where you're getting to reroll hit rolls of 1 and reroll wound rolls of 1 for all units within 6 inches, because it's an aura. So you could pair that alongside your Doomsday Arcs, rerolling 1s to hit and wound. You could pair it with the Locust Heavy Destroyers, but they probably get to reroll their wound rolls of a 1 against their specific target anyway, so it's not as efficient as it could be. I mean, there are other abilities here. You get to reroll charge rolls for units within 6, and there's an aura within 6 to get to ignore any modifiers to dice rolls and stuff like that, which I think is okay. It's not the greatest thing. His ability, which is called the Silent King, you can turn off Battle Shock for a unit. I don't really care for Battle Shock. Sometimes it, very situational times, it does come into play, and you lose an objective because of it. And yeah, it could be big at that very moment, but there is also the chance that you've got 1 command point spare, and it is actually your turn, and you're using the Insane Bravery stratagem just to kind of completely pass that. So very situational, but all in all, the Silent King, are you bringing him for damage? Maybe. You've got better options. Again, you could look at the Monolith, again, the Locust Heavy Destroyers, the Doomsday Arcs. You've got other units that are cheaper that can do damage. Are you looking for buffs? Well, what are you buffing, in fact? What are you buffing? I mean, all the characters that go in units with leaders, with the leader keyword, they've all got the +1 to the hit rolls because of command protocols. You could have a Hexmark Destroyer with the +1 enhancement, and he's cheap as chips, really. Or you're turning off Battle Shock, which, for the points cost he is, I think he's just way overpriced. So bring him down 100 points for me. I think he's just way too much. That's why he's in C tier. If you bring him down about 100 points, I'd consider him sort of B+, going towards A, because then you are getting the value, but at this moment in time, there is just 0 value there. Next in the C tier, we've got the Triarch Praetorians with their slightly different design of their actual abilities. They've now got the Deep Strike ability, which gives them a little bit of a different utility, I suppose, because that used to be what the Flayed ones did. They used to pop in behind the enemy lines and all that stuff. Now the Triarch Praetorians do that, and the Flayed ones don't do that, because they've got Infiltrate. The problem I've got with the Triarch Praetorians is they don't have the in-run save still. They don't have any sort of after save. In fact, I would have liked it if they had some sort of feel no pain save. I don't know how that would work with the lore, but they just need something more than a 3+ armor with 2 wounds. These guys aren't cheap. You're talking 135 points for 5 models, and all you're really gaining is Deep Strike. Now, the weapons, the Rod of Covenants, they're okay. They're not tearing up trees. They're not doing a massive amount of work. They've got Fly. I feel like we're paying tax for Fly at the moment, and Fly isn't really that great. But realistically, I'm not picking Praetorians. I'd rather have, again, the Ophidian Destroyers to pop in with Deep Strike and then pop out again. I'd rather have the Death Marks that can fire in, with precision. And of course, the Veil of Darkness Relic as another option to be springing around. And the Transcendent Catan Shard as well, in fact, that can also spring around after advancing. I just think Triarch Praetorians, they're not doing enough damage. They're not tough enough to be staying in a certain location once they've done the Deep Strike. And they're not actually tying things up either, so they're not really doing anything what I want them to do. So, yeah, not for me. They're going to be in C tier. Near the end of C tier now, we've got the Triax Stalker, another one that I used to like in 9th edition, but it's sort of around the C tier now for me. It's 125 points. Still got all the good stuff. We've got the invulnerable save, he's got the toughness 8, 3+ armor, 12 wounds. Still got the targeting relay, although it is different now. You're not getting to re-roll ones anymore. Now you're just making the opponent lose the benefits of cover. Now cover this edition in terms of competitive play, in terms of tournament maps. There's a lot of it now, there's a lot of terrain. So I can see the value of that, especially when you're pairing them with, you know, AP1, AP2 kind of weapons, like Locust Destroyers as an example, Necron Warriors. I can see and understand why that ability is okay. And the actual range weapons that this guy has, the Heat Ray is decent, the Particle Shredder's okay, the Twin Heavy Gauss Cannon is okay. In melee, it's not that okay, it's only got 4 attacks. The damage is 3, which is nice, although it is only -1 AP, but 4 attacks I think is just criminal, and it's a good little model that's going to tie up stuff. Comparing to the previous unit we just done, the Triumph Praetorians, they're not really tying anything up because they're not got the resiliency. At least the Triumph Stalker has the resiliency, has the invuln save, has the toughness. It can at least do a bit of work, it can fire out because it's a vehicle. It's a walker on top of that, so heroic intervention works slightly differently. It's got some strengths to it, but I did like the old ability with the targeting relay, rerolling hit rolls of a 1, and it was quite a nice bit of synergy when you're combining it with other units. But for me, it's just a C tier. I don't really select it that often. I wish it was better because I have 2 of them. Then we come down to our final selection for the C tier, and we've got Vargard Oberon. So we kind of briefly touched on him when we were talking about the Nemesis earlier on, Nemesis Andrek. Now Mr. Vargard Oberon is only 85 points, and you could compare him slightly to like a Necron Lord. And the Necron Lord is also, well, the Necron Lord is 65 points, so he's 20 points more than your Necron Lord. So what do you get and what do you lose by taking Vargard Oberon? Well, let's talk about the things you gain over a Necron Lord, that is. You've got the 2+ armor save, you've got the War Scythe, which, I mean, the Necron Lord can take the Lord's Blade, but this has devastating wounds and precision, which is pretty cool. Strength 8, -3 2 damage. He also, I believe, fights first, which he does. When this model is leading a unit, he will be fighting first. And he's also going to be giving himself, as well as Nemesis Andrek, the 4+ Feel No Pain save ability. Now, here's the bad side of this. So first of all, if you're taking a Necron Lord, you're instantly gaining a Resurrection Orb, which Vargard Oberon doesn't grant you. He doesn't grant you the Resurrection Orb. Second of all, he's an epic hero, so no enhancements there. Third of all, because you've already got Nemesis Andrek and Vargard Oberon into a unit, you can't take more than 2 leaders in a unit, as they clarified this in the rules commentary errata. You then can't take a further character like a Cryptek in the unit. Also, there's going to be no Cryptek, so therefore there's going to be no Cryptothralls for the unit, for the Bodyguard unit. And the Cryptothralls themselves actually give the 4+ Feel No Pain save to the Cryptek. Now, if you're adding a Technomancer as your Cryptek, then you're going to be giving a 5+ Feel No Pain save to the entire unit. Or if you're bringing Orokin the Diviner, you're going to be giving the whole unit a 4+ Invulnerable save. And don't forget, you are paying 20 points more for Vargard Oberon over a Necron Lord. So I think he should have been dropped down to the same sort of price as a Necron Lord. Yes, he does have precision, which is kind of cool. But I mean, realistically, any character could have precision with the Epic Challenge stratagem for 1 command point. So it's not that big of a deal. I think I would just rather select the Technomancer over this guy any day of the week. Right, so that is C tier all wrapped up. Now we're going to be moving over into B tier, which is another load of models. There's another load of units to talk about. Let's get into it. So we've got Andrek here, the Traveller. This one caused a few stirs in the Discord again. We were undecided on whether he should be a C tier or a B tier kind of character. We did opt in the end to go with the B tier. I think I put my foot down. Now let's talk about the bad to begin. So he can only go with Necron Immortals. He can't go with Warriors. He can't go with Lich Guard. It's only the Immortals that he can go with. That's the first problem, if you like. The second problem, of course, he's an epic hero, so no enhancements. And the third problem is the Resurrection Orb. There isn't one. If you're taking a Necron Overlord, you've got one. The fourth problem, the attacking arrow is only 1 shot. It would be nice if it just went through invuln saves, but it doesn't, so it could just get completely ignored with a 4+ invuln. Away it goes. The War Scythe is nice as an option, and the 2 abilities are pretty decent. I mean, the Mind of the Machine is a little bit funny, if you like. You can make an enemy vehicle within 12 inches take a leadership test, and you're going to -1 to the hit roll, or if they fail, they're not actually eligible to shoot at all. I mean, I like the old edition where you literally took over the weapon and started firing at their own units. That was kind of cool, but it's still a decent ability, Mind the Machine. And the Lord of the Fury Internals is the other ability, which is quite decent because it's a +1 to the wound roll. Now, +1 to the wound roll is actually a mega ability. We kind of know this from the Lich Guard with their -1 to the wound roll when they're with the Noble. You know the power of that. So for example, if you've got your Necron Immortals, they're strength 5. Let's say for example, you're firing at a toughness 9 vehicle. You would normally have to wound on a 5+. But because of the +1 to that wound roll, you're now wounding toughness 9 with strength 5 on 4s. That's ultra powerful. Now bear in mind also, Immortals have got their own ability to be able to reroll wound rolls of a 1. If that enemy unit is on an objective, that is. So getting to reroll wound rolls of 1 and a +1 to the wound roll is quite a nice bit of synergy. Some people didn't like that synergy, they thought you didn't need it. I think it's pretty cool. Because again, if you're going up against toughness 9, you need 4s, but you're re-rolling the 1s, and this is just with strength 5. It's pretty good for me. It's pretty good for me. But all in all, he's a decent option if you're taking Immortals. I don't play Immortals as regularly as I would with Warriors. I prefer the Warriors right now. I think they're so good. But Immortals, you could also add a Chronomancer, for example, because you can add a Cryptek, of course, with the Crypto Thralls potentially. So they're going to be able to move, shoot, their move, or maybe even move, advance, shoot, move, because they could potentially have the Tesla carbines, which has the assault keyword. So you can do all that, then on top of Amrakir the Traveller's ability for the +1 to the wound roll. It's a nice little combo. I quite like it. That's why he's in B tier today. Going down the list, we've got the Canoptic Doomstalker. 125 points, so of course it's cheaper than a Doomsday Arc, and slightly cheaper than 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Gauss Destructors. Now the good and the bad of the Doomstalker, well, you got the 5+ Overwatch, which is pretty decent. I mean, in fact, it was only the other day at Necrons and More tournament where I went to, he took 3 of these guys, and there was an enemy unit, it was a Sisters of Battle unit, it snuck in and it was trying to deploy teleport homers. We literally just threw out the Overwatch on 5+ in the movement phase and just completely wiped the unit clean. All for 1 CP, of course, so it does have an effect, and a pretty good one. It's pretty resilient, toughness 8, 3+ armor, 4+ invuln, 12 wounds. That's not too bad. And the Doomsday Blaster has blast and is heavy. You can be hitting on a 3+. It can't ever go to a 2+. Strength 14, -3 AP, 3 damage. So not quite the same as a Doomsday Arc because that's damage 4. But it's still doing a bit of work, and don't forget it is slightly cheaper as well. The Twin Gauss Flayers I'm not too bothered about. You've only got, what, 1 or 2 shots there. And the Doomsday Limbs I don't really care for. But you could get you can get 3 of these all triangulated with a Hexmark Destroyer in the middle of them, with the Sovereign Coronal, so they're all hitting on they're all hitting on a +1 to hit, so they're all hitting on 3s. So if you were to take 3 of those, that's 375 points. Now 375 points for D6 +1 with Blast, times by 3, hitting on 3, strength 14, -3 AP, 3 damage. I think that's a lot of shots. They're taking out virtually anything you want to take out. I think overall, you're going to be taking that over a Monolith as an example. Definitely over the Silent King. But it's a solid option for the B tier, in my opinion. Going down the list, we've got the Canoptic Wraiths. We've done a video only recently on the Wraiths. I think they're okay. They're just okay. They've kind of lost their use in this edition. They used to be the unit that used to go up and tie up units with their speed. Maybe you were using Relentlessly Expansionist in the 9th edition where you got that pre-game movement. Charge them up the battlefield, you're going through terrain in the old edition. You're going through terrain, you're going through models, making a charge move, tying stuff up because they're pretty resilient with the invuln save. And now they're just not doing that. First of all, fly kind of sucks, to be honest. They've got fly. That's been nerfed. Second of all, we don't need those kind of like speed bump kind of units anymore because our warriors are so tough. Just to get through our Crypto Thralls, they likely need 8 wounds because they've got the feel no pain saves. The same applies to the Lich Guard. We've got so many resilient units that you don't need to screen off anymore because they could be the screen in fact. And the Scarabs as well, which are just cheaper than everything. So you don't really need them for that department. You could argue that you need them for scoring, but you've got Tomb Blades, Ophidian Destroyers as an example there. Again, the Scarabs for certain secondaries. So they're not as needed for that. You've then got the tying up situation where the Warriors can do that. The Lich Guard can do that. The Wraiths can do it okay because they are toughness 6. That's something that's good about them. They are now toughness 6 and they've also got that ability where they fly over units, to cause mortal wounds. Now something I want to in fact correct while I'm here is they don't need to fly over the entire unit, you just need to fly over a model, and then there you go, you've done it. So it is probably easier than I thought it would be, but I've still not had that situation arise. So for me, they're only B, they're not bad, there's nothing wrong with them, you've just got better options again, but this is not a bad option. The Vicious Claws I think are the better option, not the Whip Coils. I'd go with the Vicious Claws every time. Next we've got the Chronomancer. Now the Chronomancer, this used to be one of my favourite cryptechs in 9th edition. It used to have the rerollable charge as well as the invulnerable save for a unit, and it was like any unit back then, wasn't it? Because characters didn't go with units, but they were not targetable because of Lookout Sir. That's all changed. They're not going with Scorpion Destroyers, and his actual use has changed also. So he's now got the ability where you're subtracting 1 from the hit rolls for enemy units that are targeting the unit is leading. So again, it could be Lich Guard, Immortals, Warriors. And also the Chronometron ability, so you can effectively move after you've shot 5 inches. You're not going to be making a charge move, so you know it is what it is. But I would put them with Immortals because you've got the Tesla carbines as an option. You could, like I said earlier in the video, you can move, advance, shoot, move. That's rapid. That's rapid. Or you just do it with your warriors. You're not going to be doing advancing unless you're using the Protocol of Sunstorm. 1 CP, you can give them the assault keyword for that turn. Then you will be advancing your 20-man warrior brick with the Crypto Thralls and the 2 characters all moving up the board rapidly. Moving 5, advancing, shooting, moving another 5. That's mayhem. That's mayhem. He's only got the Aeon Stave now, which isn't that great. He can take enhancements. I don't think you need them. You can also take Crypto Thralls, of course, because he's a Cryptech. And of course, you're going to be pairing him potentially with an Overlord or a Lord. So maybe you're using the free stratagems and things like that. Next, we come on to the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer. One of my favourite, if not my favourite, Catan Shard from 9th edition. I used to love this guy. 255 points now, so a reasonable price. Fairly tanky, fairly resilient. He's got the toughness 11, 4+ armor save, 12 wounds. He's got the 4+ invulnerable save, and he halves damage. Unfortunately, he is of course an epic hero, so you can't be putting the Sempiternal Weave on him for the 4+ 3 no pain save. But he does dish out a pretty decent amount of damage to compensate for that slight lack of resiliency compared to the Transcendent Catan Shard. First of all, you've got the ranged weapon Gaze of Death, which is d6 plus 3 damage at strength 12, which is pretty good, and blast on top of that. And the melee side of the weapon, which has 2 profiles, the strike profile, strength 14, the damage d6, it's got devastating wounds again, and you've got the sweep profile for the anti-infantry, but it's not like light infantry. Strength 8, minus 2 AP, 2 damage, so virtually going up against intercessors, you're swiping them clean. Excellent ability, well, excellent weaponry. As for the abilities, the Drain Life ability is a little bit like one of the Catan Shard powers from the previous edition. I can't remember which one it was now. Was it Cosmic Fire? Where you're throwing out mortal wounds within 9 inches. It's pretty much like that, but it's only 6 inches, although it is D3 mortal wounds. Not too bad overall. I think he's a pretty decent beat stick. Again, I'd probably prefer the Transcendent Catan Shard in this edition, but if he gets hold of something, he is doing work. And 255 points, I think that's a pretty good steal. I just think unless you're using double or even triple Catan Shards in your list, you're going to go for the Transcendent first. So if you are playing the second Catan Shard, then yeah, you would probably take the Nightbringer. But yeah, for me, he is going in the B tier today. Very similarly, we've got the Catan Shard of the Void Dragon. Now the Void Dragon is 270 points, so he's actually 15 points more than the Nightbringer. Now all the same stats, the same sort of resiliency, the same invulnerable save. The weaponry is slightly different, of course. It's more of an anti-vehicle weapon. It doesn't mean you have to target vehicles, of course it's still going to be pretty decent. D6 plus 2 damage on the actual Spear of the Dragon at range, as well as the Voltaic Storm, which is, again, it's like a Marine Killer. It's got damage 2, strength 7, d6 plus 3 attacks on top of that, with sustained hits 2, as well as blast, so it's got a fair amount of attacks there with Voltaic Storm. And the melee weapons are anti-vehicle, strength 12, minus 3 AP, d6 plus 2 damage. The fact that it's anti-vehicle 2 plus means you are wounding on a 2, and it will automatically cause a critical wound. Now unfortunately it's not paired with devastating wounds or anything like that, so it is just a 2+. But that means against the high toughness vehicles at a toughness 14, toughness whatever, right? You only need a 2+ to do the actual work, which is pretty good because he's hitting on 2s as well. So 2s and 2s and you're doing work. He's also got the Canoptic Tail Blades as extra attacks, which are It's 6 attacks there. It's not bad. I mean, it's anti-infantry, light infantry this time. Strength 6, -1 AP 1 damage. It's not bad at all. And the abilities, so we select one vehicle within 12 inches. On a 2+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds, and we gain D3 mortal wounds depending on what we've just done. I think that's much more improved over 9th edition because we had to actually destroy vehicles to regain wounds. So overall, it's not a bad option. Again, it's an epic hero, so you can't be using the Septernal Weave. I think I prefer the Nightbringer, but they're sort of on par with me. I think I've just got a little bit of a soft spot for the Nightbringer. Realistically, they're probably on par, and that's why they're both in the B tier. On to our snipers, we've got the Death Marks next. I think the Death Marks are pretty good this edition. They're not on auto-include, that's why they're not in A or S, but they are reasonably good. 65 points for 5, 130 points for 10. You'd probably want to take them in units of... I don't know really, I mean, I always say units of 10 will do the work against the character, but now that we've lost Deep Strike with the flayed ones, they've now got Infiltrate. A lot of people are using the Death Marks. I mean, we've got also Praetorians, but they're not as good in my opinion. So some people are taking these in 5s. You can still fire at the same target, so it doesn't really matter too much, as long as you've got 10 if you want to target characters. That's the whole point of them in my opinion. It's the precision ability with the strength 5 -2 AP 2 damage, with heavy and precision. They're doing a bit of work on characters, but they can also be used for secondary mission objectives, behind enemy lines, engage on all fronts, investigate signal, deploy teleport homers. There's lots of reasons where you could take these guys, and for only 65 points to be scoring after popping in from Deep Strike, I think it's a good option. They're okay as well in terms of resiliency because they're toughness 5. They do only have 1 wound, unfortunately. You know, you can't have everything. Their ability is actually okay. In your opponent's movement phase, you can pop in and effectively shoot as if it was our shooting phase. But like I said, I kind of, unless there's a character there or I'm scoring secondary objectives in my turn, I'm not going to be doing that. There's no point of putting them in harm's way. You may as well wait until your turn. Moving into the flayed ones. I wasn't sure about the flayed ones. I was going to drop them slightly, but I feel like in competitive play, we do need these infiltrator units. Now we've got a severe lack of infiltrators apart from the Acanthrites, which are Forge World and they're not as good. What are the points for the flayed ones? Let me just double check. I think they're 70 points. Yeah, 70 points for 5, 140 points for 10. With the infiltrate keyword, so they're going to be deploying in the no man's land, more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Now they're not doing much damage, I don't believe. I know they've got a fair amount of attacks. Sustain hits 1, twin linked. Take them in 5 or 10s. Unfortunately not in 20s anymore, although that does save us a little bit of money because they are quite expensive flayed ones to buy, unless you've got that magazine, which not everybody managed to get. Their ability I don't really like that much. If a unit's below half strength, then a successful hit roll scores a critical hit. That means as long as you hit on a 3, it's going to automatically become a 6, which is sustained, so therefore you get an additional hit. But if the unit is below half strength, you're probably completing them, you're finishing them off anyway. I mean, in some situations you're not. Maybe there's, I don't know, you've got down to 4 flayed ones and you're going up against 2 Terminators out of the 5. Then yeah, those situations are different. You're getting a few extra attacks there and it will assist you. But a lot of the time you've already whittled the unit down and you're just going to annihilate them anyway. So it's all about the infiltrator keyword, but they've also got stealth as well. So it's a -1 to hit them, which gives them a tiny bit of resiliency. They are only toughness 4. They've only got a 4 armor save. So they're not going to stay up that long. Again, they could be used for scoring, area denial potentially from turn 1 if you pull that card. It could be secure no man's land. Those objective markers that you can't quite reach in your first battle round without advancing because you've not got the quickest units potentially. These guys are already going to be there and scoring, which makes them usable. And also don't forget, infiltrators is going to be an anti-infiltrators ability, because if you go first and you drop your unit first, then your opponent is going to be able to drop within 9 inches of them. So you've effectively screened out a little area of the battlefield, which will protect you maybe in your turn 1 from being charged and things like that. You're also going to be defending objectives because they can't deploy on them. So there is lots of reasons to have the infiltrate keyword within your army, at least one of them anyway, for competitive play. Going down the B tier, we've got Illuminazares, one of the named characters, one of the epic heroes within our Necrons index. Now don't get me wrong, if you kit your list out with all the battle line units, the warriors and the immortals, loads of them, then this guy is S tier. He's fantastic, he's brilliant. But you've got to have a very unique specific list in order to maximise the effectiveness of Illuminazares. Now this guy has 220 points, so he's a fair chunk of your points. Yes, he's quite tanky, he's got the toughness 8, 2+ armour, 9 wounds, feel no pain of a 4+, and an invulnerable save of a 4+, so he's pretty good at that kind of stuff, at staying up and running. He's also got the lone operative ability if he's got a unit within 3 inches, which he always should have. And of course you could use the Eternal Guardian stratagem to bring up a character if needed, because he is an infantry after all. Now unfortunately he can't be leading units, so therefore there's going to be no Crypto Thralls that are going to pair with Illuminazares in terms of going into a unit, because they get attached to the bodyguard unit. He can't have a bodyguard unit. But as already mentioned, he's a lone operative, he doesn't necessarily need them, and his abilities are affecting battleline units within 6, so therefore he doesn't need to be in the unit to apply his abilities to them. He's going to be worsening the armor penetration of enemy units that are firing at our units, as well as bumping up our AP, so our Ghost Reapers, could be our Ghost Blasters, whatever battleline units weapons you're using, it's going to be up in the AP and minus in the opponent's AP, which is good. Overall it's pretty good. You can also increase the range of that mechanical augmentation by 3 inches, removing models effectively, which isn't always the case. He can fight. I would rather not have him in a fight, because I don't want my battle line units in a fight. Immortals and warriors, they can do a job, they can tie up stuff because they keep coming back. But realistically I want them using their lethal hits on their weapons and shooting. As for in terms of shooting for Illuminazares, he's got the Eldritch Lance, strength 9, -3 P3 damage with 3 shots. That's okay. It's not amazing because 3 shots hitting on 3s, you're going to lose 1. You then got to wound, go through an invuln. It's okay. And the melee side of the weapon is pretty much the same, but you get some extra shots, or some extra attacks with the impaling legs. They're only really anti-infantry. The problem I've got though, the reason for him not being in A or S tier is just the price of him. He's kind of expensive, and again you've got to have a very situational list in order to maximise the use of him. Next we come on to one of those battle line units in fact, and it's the Necron Immortals. Now some of you guys might just say this is an S tier unit. I prefer the warriors over the immortals, some of you prefer the immortals over the warriors. It's totally up to you. I would just swap them around if you're doing your own tier list. Immortals are fairly resilient for a battle line unit anyway. They're the same price as the flayed ones, 70 points for 5, 140 points for 10. They are toughness 5 with that 3+ armor save. The weapons are pretty decent, the Ghost Blaster or the Tesla Carbine, you've got your options there. But I really like their ability, so where you're re-rolling wound rolls over 1, and if the target is on an objective you get to re-roll all the wound rolls instead. And if you combine them, as we kind of mentioned earlier in this video, Amrakir the Traveller potentially, you're going to get a +1 to the wound roll. Quite a nice little combination there. But as you're taking these in 5s or 10, they're much easier to hide. Now there is less synergy, you've not got like a Ghost Arc for example, and you're not going to necessarily put like a Technomancer in there, not in my opinion anyway, because yes they're getting a feel no pain save with the toughness 5, but I think you're saving it for the larger units, again warriors, 20-man warrior blobs, and they're cheap enough to be doing your secondary objectives. You can forego their shooting, only 70 points, do an objective, whether it's cleanse, whether it's, again, it could be deploy teleport homers, depending on how far up the battlefield you get, and depending on what card you get, they can be quite useful for that. Next we got one of the big vehicles within the index, and it's going to be the Necron Monolith. 385 points. Now when this first was showcased, well, it was more of a sneak peek rather than a showcase from GW on Warhammer Community. I didn't like the idea of it. I thought it was quite, I've never really been massively keen on monoliths in terms of the actual battlefield. I love the model, but the actual play I'm not that fond of. Because of the size of this thing, it's huge. It's quite difficult to do stuff with, deep striking, just general movement, because the terrain is so cluttered nowadays in competitive play. However, it is a pretty resilient thing. It's toughness 14, 2+ armor, 20 wounds. It doesn't have an invuln save, but it's 2+ armor, so you don't necessarily need an invuln save. Even a weapon that's got -3 AP will give you a 5+ armor save anyway. So I always say you don't necessarily need it. Of course there are going to be weapons that are -4, even -5 potentially. That will happen in the game, but you do have 20 wounds, so it's okay. The weaponry is pretty good with the Death Rays. I like the Death Rays over the Gorse Flux. You get 4 Death Rays, strength 12 -4 AP, D6 +1 damage. I think that's okay. You also get the Particle Whip, which is also pretty good. You get 3d6 attacks, strength 8, -1 AP, 2 damage, so you're literally just whipping the crap out of Space Marines with that. That's nice. 3d6 attacks as well, that's what, 10, 11 on average? Could be 18, that's quite a fair amount. And the Portal of Exile, it's not auto-hitting anymore, but it is only, you're hit on 2, so it's not too bad. Strength 8, -2 AP, and 3 damage, so it literally could be munching up Space Marine Terminators if you were to get lucky and get through all their inbound saves. But really, it's all about the Eternity Gate. It gives you a lot of movement flexibility within game. And in your reinforcement step of your movement phase, you select one Necron infantry unit that's either in reserves or on the battlefield, and you literally drag them out of the battlefield, and then you return them within 6 inches of your monolith. So you're going to be moving stuff around, especially after this thing has deep struck into the location you want it to be in. You could bring your Necron warriors out from the back, put them right at the front. It could be a Lich Guard, it could be a Scorpion Destroyers. Whatever you're planning on moving around, this thing could do it for virtually free. Well, I say 3, it's 385 points, it's still quite expensive. Now thankfully, one of the other great things about the monolith, which we've kind of have to go back on a little bit with the weaponry, is the fact that it's got the towering keyword. So a lot of the rules and restrictions in terms of cover and benefits of cover, terrain and all that, don't necessarily apply when models have the towering keyword. It can be seen, it can see pretty much everything, it can also be seen, which is also a flaw to it, but it means you can target the units that are trying to hide, especially in the early turns. Unfortunately though, we've only got 24-inch range, so those early turns may not even matter. The penultimate option for B tier for me is the Plasmancer. Now I of course was bigging up the Plasmancer at the start of the edition. I was whacking him in 20-man units of warriors, lethal hits, on a 5+, I loved that. But then I was starting to realise, you know what, it's not about the damage with these guys, it's more about the resiliency, so you're better off with Orokin the Diviner or a Technomancer over a Plasmancer. That's not to say he's bad, he's actually still pretty good if you're still playing that way. You can also pair him with Immortals with the Tesla Carbines, so 5+ critical hits with the Sustain Hits 2 ability. That's going to be a lot of shocks with your Tesla options. You're of course taking Crypto Thralls, but again we're now talking offense rather than defense. But Crypto Thralls are always good, aren't they? Realistically, they're always good. This guy's only 55 points, so 40 points more for the Crypto Thrall, so a total combination of 95 points for critical hits on a 5+, the 4+ for no pain on the characters, 2 more models for your unit. I think that's okay, that's pretty decent. And he's also got his Harbinger of Destruction ability to be thrown at mortal wings, which I always seem to forget in my games. Yeah, I need to start remembering that. The final one of the B tier, I've gone with the Royal Warden. Again, these are not in any specific order within the tier group itself. I've just got them in alphabetical order. The Royal Warden, he's only 40 points, so he's he is the cheapest character we've got. One of the cheapest models / units we've got. I think the Locust Destroyers. I think it's only the Locust Destroyers that are cheaper. They're 30 points for a single man unit, but you only get one model with that, and that's not a character. But the Royal Warden's got his own little tricks if you were to select him, and that's if you were to select him, because there's so many other characters that you'd probably select over the Royal Warden, but here's what he could do for you. So he's a reasonably standard character, he's got no in-1 save, he's got toughness 5, he's not that resilient, but he adds the heavy and assault keywords to your unit's range attacks. Now you might be thinking, well, Command Protocols already gives you a +1 to the hit roll, so why would you need heavy? Now at this moment you're totally right, but we will be getting a codex at some point this year, and Command Protocols is just the dynasty rule, so if you're using a different dynasty from the codex, then therefore you're not going to get the +1 to the hit roll, so therefore heavy will actually come into more play. But we are doing an index review right now, and we've only got the Awakened Dynasty at present, so we've got to kind of score him on that. The heavy part of this right now is okay. I mean, if there's a -1 to hit penalty, then heavy will apply if you are staying stationary. So it would be +1 for heavy, a +1 for Command Protocols, a -1 for the -1 to hit. That will just give you still a +1, so you've not gone over the -1 or +1 restriction, because they do all stack. The assault keyword on the Tesla weapons anyway, so you're not going to combine them like with the Tesla Carbines or the Immortals. But if you're going with the Gorse Blasters or with the Warriors, if you're going with the Gorse Reapers, the Gorse Flayers, all of a sudden they can now be advancing and then also shooting, which is good. And again, if you pair with a Chronomancer, which we spoke about earlier in this section, you could then be moving after you've shot as well. So there's a huge combination there. Again, you've got another way of doing this. So with the heavy keyword, you had the command protocols. With the assault keyword, you've got the stratagem protocol of Sunstorm to give you assault. So there are other ways to bypass the Real Warden. The other ability is you can basically take away battle shock from a unit within 12. I don't care too much about that. I'd rather just pay a CP to do that rather than spend 40 points on a character slot in my list. Now, he's not going to be going with Lichguard, but why would you? His ability only really applies to range attacks, and to be honest, you're never going to select him with Lichguard anyway. So yeah, other than that, he's just a cheap character. I did use him once to just fill a Ghost Arc, but I then kind of quickly discovered that, you know what, I'd rather pay the extra points for a Hexmark Destroyer or a Technomancer with the Canoptic Cloak. But if you need to really save on points, you could fill up your Ghost Arc with a Royal Warden, therefore you don't need 10 Necron Warriors. And therefore, you can use your Ghost Arc to bump up your Warriors in terms of giving them reanimation protocols, and you've still fulfilled the transport capacity of the Ghost Arc by putting a character inside it. So that's the only real reasons I take the Royal Warden, but for 40 points you can do all these things. Okay, so that was B tier. We're now moving into A tier, and we've got 9 options for you in this tier group. The first one is the Canoptic Scarab Swarms. I was umming and ahhing about putting them in S tier or A tier this edition. I think they're A tier because of the lack of objectives secured. We don't have that anymore, of course. This is a new edition. In fact, they have OC 0, so therefore they're not just running onto an objective, hiding through terrain, being unseen, stealing objectives. They're not doing that anymore. However, they've got a complete different role in the game at present. Now, they're 40 points for a min unit of 3. I'd take them in 3s unless I've already maxed out with my 3 units, then I'd start pushing them to 6s. But they are so useful for so many different things. Like screening off, of course, is the main one. For 40 points, you're screening off your good models, your range weapons like your Locust Heavy Destroyers, your Doomsday Arcs in particular, because that thing doesn't want to move. It could potentially be your Nightbringers if they don't want to get charged first. The Silent King. There's loads of different things that you could be screening off. You're also screening off Deep Strike. If you can stick a unit in each quarter or in the corners of your deployment zone, then that's going to stop your opponent from deep striking in behind your lines and scoring Investigate Signal, deploy Teleport Homers, all those kind of things. But they're also good for secondaries, because there's a lot of secondaries that relate to doing these new actions like Cleanse, again, deploy Teleport Homers, Investigate Signals, all those kind of stuff. You don't want to necessarily get your Locust Heavy Destroyers going into your own quarter, in your own corner, to do Investigate Signal, because that will be a waste of their shooting. They can't shoot if they do that. Whereas if you've got a Canoptic Scab Swarm, you just throw them in the corner, they can do it for 40 points, and then you get something else to do the far ones, whether it's Death Marks, whether it's a Hexmark Destroyer, Ophidian Destroyers, they can do that job later on up the battlefield. So yeah, they've got a different use. They are only Toughness 2 now, not Toughness 3, so that means even Bolt Gunfire is going to win them on 2s, unfortunately. OC we've already spoke about. The ability Self-Destruction only happens in engagement range, unfortunately, so what they can effectively blow up. We did have this in the previous edition, but it was a stratagem. And bearing in mind reanimation protocols is going to happen in your turn, in your command phase, then you can get the model back up. You can also have a Canoptic Spider as well to bring models back as well. That will help. The other unique ability it has is in engagement range, you can -1 of the objective control of your opponent's units to a minimum of 1, unfortunately, but that could potentially swing an objective. In terms of damage, they're not doing much. I mean, it does have lethal hits. There's 6 attacks per base, lethal hits. You're hitting on 5s and your strength 2, so you're not really going to hit and you're not really going to wound, so you're looking for 6s realistically, but even then it's AP 0 and 1 damage, so don't expect anything in terms of damage. They're not going to do a lot. They are still good, they're just different, that's all I can say. Next we've got the Doomsday Arc. This one has definitely taken a bump up at this edition. It is 185 points, so it is competing with the Locust Heavy Destroyers and maybe the bigger stuff like the Monolith, the Doom Scythe potentially. And you're taking this thing basically for the Doomsday Cannon. Doomsday Cannon is 72-inch range, so you can see the entire board. D6 plus 1 attack, so they've slightly bumped up the attacks only by 1, but that's okay, it is slightly better. It's strength 15, -4 AP, and the damage is now a flat 4, which is a huge increase because it used to be D6 damage. So having a flat 4, I would have taken a flat 3 to be honest with you, but 4 is pretty tasty. If you can get a lot of shots off with this thing, you're doing some work. In fact, going back to the amount of attacks, D6 plus 1 is nice, but you've got Blast, don't forget, which is different for 10th edition, so you can get more shots that way. It's also heavy, so you're going to get a +1 if you stay still, and you'll want to be staying still because if you do, you get devastating wounds on the actual weapon. Devastating wounds, if you roll a 6 to wound, there's no invuln saves, it's just a straight 4 mortal wounds for every one that goes through, or every 6 that you roll, that is a dev wound. So really that weapon is pretty good. You've also got the Gauss Flare arrays, of course similar to the Ghost Arcs. They're just doing a bit of anti-infantry, light infantry work. They can be fired into combat if you do get tagged as well and things like that. Actual resiliency is pretty decent. I mean, toughness 9 is okay. It's not mega tough, but it's tough enough. 3+ armor, 14 wounds, a 4+ invulnerable save, which does make it pretty tough. And again, if you're comparing to the Locust Heavy Destroyers, they've not got an invuln save, they've not got toughness 9, they've not got 14 wounds between them. They have 12, and they're toughness 6, I believe they are, no invuln. So they are less resilient, but they're more mobile. And everything here's got fly, but fly for vehicles isn't going to do you much. But I do like the Doomsday Arc. It's just a shame that they do need to stay stationary in order to be most effective. I do want to move them around. You still can move them around, just lose devastating wounds and potentially heavy. You can boost the unit up with the Sovereign Coronal, which is quite a common strategy now, where you're getting your Hexmark Destroyer, Sovereign Coronal for a +1 to hit aura. You get a few Doomsday Arcs or a few Doomstalkers around this model, and they're all hitting on a +1 to hit, which is fairly nice. But yeah, for me, A tier, definitely gone up in terms of its value, and you're going to see a few of these on the battlefield. We've got another arc for you today. We've got the Ghost Arc next. I like the Ghost Arc, and it's only because I play with a lot of Necron warriors. If you don't play warriors, then of course the Ghost Arc is going to be D tier for you. There's just no point having it without the warriors. Now the reason for this is skip all the nonsense. The main reason for taking it is the Repair Barge ability. It's effectively the same as Undying Legions, the stratagem. You can enact your reanimation protocols as soon as you lose a model in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase. Now the unit that's doing the damage has to of course complete all their attacks before you start doing this stuff. But as soon as you lose a model and that unit's finished making attacks, you activate this for free because it's not a stratagem, it's just an ability. You do reanimation protocols on your warriors. If they're on an objective, it's going to be D3 +3 warriors back. If there's a reanimator nearby, that's an additional D3, and that's as soon as you lose a model. If you lose some more warriors later in the same phase, you've still got the stratagem to pull. You've still got the Undying Legion stratagem, where you're effectively doing all this again. If you've got a leader in there, you're going to get an extra one as well. Reanimator, D3 more, and it just makes killing warriors extremely difficult when you've got a Ghost Arc and the stratagem at your ready. But if it gets to your opponent's command phase, you're going to be using your Resurrection Orb. Even in the previous turn, if they've been in the fight phase and they've lost models and it's about to be your opponent's turn potentially, you've still got that Resurrection Orb to be bringing models back. In your own command phase, we're doing reanimation protocols as standard. You then could add the Technomancer in there with the Crypt Throws. I know I'm going a little bit off tangent here. This is about the Ghost Arc, but I'm just trying to show you the layers and layers and layers of defense you can use for Necron warriors, and the Ghost Arc is definitely one of those better ones. But yeah, this is just my tier list after all. If you don't use warriors, then this is going to be a D. Imhotep the Stormlord is next. It's an epic hero, one of the named characters, and he is costing, I believe, double checking, he is costing 105 points. Now he is very comparable to a Necron Overlord. That's probably a video in itself. What would be better, Imhotep or an Overlord? We'll come back to that one day. He's got the same sort of stats as an Overlord. The weapons are pretty good. The Gauntlet of Fire, which is effectively a torrent, strength 5 minus 1 AP 1 damage. That's okay. The Staff of the Destroyer is a second weapon, which is strength 6 minus 3 AP 2 damage. That's okay. And it's also a melee weapon with dead wounds. That's okay. I mean, there's only 4 attacks there in melee. But really, the main reason for taking Imhotep the Stormlord is for the 2 abilities that he has. Grand Strategist, where you're going to be gaining extra CP in your command phase. So every command phase you have, bang, there's 2 CP, one for the actual, the standard CP you get, and one for him. CP this edition, I believe, is crazy strong if you can get hold of it. And we're quite a thirsty faction for CP. Again, we just spoke about the Undying Legion stratagem. For your warriors, you want to be using that in every phase where possible. Sunstorm for the assault keyword if you want that. Eternal Guardians if you want to stand up your characters. Vengeful Stars, which I think is a better option than Overwatch. Overwatch in itself is another one with all command rerolls, Insane Bravery, Epic Challenge. There's so many stratagems now and they're all pretty good, and I think we are thirsty for them. So having a way of gaining an extra one is pretty useful. Now when you compare him to the Overlord can give you a free stratagem, but at least with Imitate you're going to have that flexibility of taking that CP and using it anywhere that you see fit. The other ability is Lord of Storm, so it's effectively going to throw out mortal wounds within 12 inches to units. And on a 2, 3, 4 or 5 they're doing D3, and on a 6 it's going to be D3 plus 3 mortal wounds, so it's a fair amount, it's once per battle. I think I personally would prefer to take a Necron Overlord over Imitate the Stormlord, which is why you probably already worked it out by now. Overlord is in S tier. You've not seen him yet. The Overlord is cheaper, more customizable. The Overlord isn't an epic hero, so you've got the enhancement options. The Resurrection Orb is another huge flaw for Imitate. You've not got one. The ability is kind of matched with the Mild Be Done ability with the Overlord, but he's still a decent one, he's still a decent option, and that's why he's in A tier today. Locust Destroyers are next. These guys need a new model, don't they? I mean, I like the model, I'm not too bothered, but a lot of comments are saying, when are we getting a new model for the Locust Destroyers? Let's go through the Locust Destroyers. So we already know the points because we said it a minute ago, well, about 10 minutes ago now. 30 points a model. Oddly, you can take a single one, you can take 2, you can take 3, or you can take 6. But for 30 points each. They've gone up in toughness to toughness 6, 3 plus armor save, 3 wounds. They're pretty much as they were-ish from 9th edition. They've still got the Gauss Cannons, they've got lethal hits now. Strength 5 minus 2 AP, 2 damage. With the Gauss Cannon strength 6 before. Can't remember. They're doing a fair amount of work, 3 shots per model. If you've got 6 of them, that's going to be 18 shots with lethal hits. They're also re-rolling hit rolls of a 1 if you're targeting the closest eligible unit. And of course, if you've got a Locust Lord in there, then they're not only going to get a +1 to the hit roll, so they'll be hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, but also 5+ rolls are going to be critical hits, so therefore any 5+s are lethal hits, so they don't even need to roll to wound. When you've got 18 shots with all that combination, that's pretty good. That's pretty decent. It is only 24-inch range, but you could potentially put the Veil of Darkness on the Locust Lord if you wanted to. I quite like them. They're removing models, they're removing Space Marines, and anything that is 2 wounds, or well, 2 wounds or maybe 4 wounds, because then 2 wounds going through will actually kill a model. Anything that is 3 wounds is a little bit wasteful, and again, anything that is 1 wound, you're overkilling. You don't really need to do it, but they are pretty good. Now, unfortunately, we have lost the infantry keyword with the Locust Destroyers, as well as the Locust Heavy Destroyers. They are now mounted, so they're not interacting with terrain in the same way as they used to. They're effectively like bikers now. I know they're not bikers, but they've got the same keyword as a biker. So they're not flying through terrain as they used to, which is a little bit of a downer, and flying itself has been, of course, nerfed. But a decent unit overall. Now, we just touched upon the Locust Lord, which is our next selection in this tier group. I like the Locust Lord. I know he's not an auto-include. For me, actually, I'd say he was very close to an auto-include, but I know a lot of people would disagree. Now, the Locust Lord, you're putting him with the Locust Destroyers, or you're going to be putting him with the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Now, he is 85 points, but I think he's definitely worth it. You could argue, well, I could just take more Locust Destroyers or more Locust Heavy Destroyers, but I think he's got a lot of value. First of all, he's a character. You can stick an enhancement on him. Second of all, critical hits on a 5+. That's going to be very useful for especially Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Exterminators, because you've got the Sustained Hits 1 ability. And we've done the maps in the previous videos, but if you've got a unit of 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers with the Exterminators, with Sustained Hits 1, with a +1 to the hits roll because of the Lord, you're going to get from your 36 shots at rapid fire, because there's 12 each at rapid fire, you're going to get 42 hits from that, because Sustained Hits 1 on 5+ rolls is going to give you more. So 42 hits just by having a Necron, just by having a Locust Lord in the unit. 42 hits, strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage. That's going to shred virtually anything up. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's Bellicor. It doesn't matter whether it's Terminators. It doesn't matter whether it's just basic Guardians. It doesn't matter. It's going to absolutely shred them up. Now, what else does the Locust Lord have? He's got the Locust Lord's Blade, or the Lord's Blade, sorry. It's only 4 attacks, but again, it's hurting Marines. I like that. The Destroy cult ability we spoke about. Driven by Hate. This model, so only the Locust Lord. If he's attacking a unit below half strength, you get to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls. I don't think I've ever used that ability, to be honest with you, because he's with the shooty unit. Unless he's going to be used as a beat stick, could stick on the Septonal Weave. I don't think I've ever played him that way. Maybe that ability could help with that. Something to think about. He's also got War Gear options, which makes him even more epic for me, because you can either take the Phylactery for a 5+ feel no pain save. Again, if you're going solo, like we just mentioned, you won't need the Septonal Weave, because you've got a 5+ for free. It's not a 4+, but a 5+ is there. and the Resurrection Orb, which is the common one, for reanimating in your opponent's command phase. But for me, he's definitely worth it. He's adding so much to your destroyer units, your Locust Destroyers and your Heavy Destroyers. He, for me, is an A+. But as we're doing just an overall tier group, he's in the A tier. Next, we're talking about another Lord. This time it's just the standard Necron Lord on foot, 65 points. You're pretty much bringing in because either A, you couldn't afford an Overlord in your list in terms of your points, you were just shy on points there, or B, because you're taking Orokin potentially and you've already got the Invuln save for the unit, so therefore you don't need to pay more points for the Overlord with the Invuln because the Lord will gain an Invuln. That's the only sort of reason you would take him over an Overlord. Just taking him as standard though, he does have the Resurrection Orb, which is the main reason for actually taking this guy. Melee and range attacks, you're not doing much. You're +1 to the movement characteristics of units, that's okay. And you can use stratagems on the unit even though they're battle shocked, which is actually pretty decent. It's come up a few times. I mean, being battle shocked, if it's a really important unit such as your Necron warriors, just don't allow them to be battle shocked, just have the CP ready and spend it. For A, he makes quite a lot of my lists, my warrior list in particular. I don't really want to go with double overlords if I'm taking 2 units of warriors, because the My Will Be Done ability is only really going to work once, because that's what it says in the ability. So therefore I try and maximise on a different unit, on a different set of abilities. Nearly there from A tier, we've got the Seraptic Heavy Construct next. Now we did do a video on the Seraptic Heavy Construct about a month or so ago now. This guy is expensive, he's 540 points now because he's got Towering, so the points value did go up. 540 points is an expensive cost. I'm just trying to find his stats because it's on the different data sheet. Imperial Armour, here we go. So he's got all the stats you want. He's fast, movement 10, 12, toughness 12, 3+ armour, 5+ invuln, 24 wounds. Objective control is 10, which is mad. These weapons are insanely good. The 2 singularity generators, they've got blast and dev wounds, and it's 2d6 per generator. So that's effectively 4d6 shots. If you're taking those, strength 10 -3 AP, 4 damage. That's just a ton of shots there. You can top them out for the Synaptic Obliterators, or 2 of those, and 2 transdimensional projectors. Now, even though the projectors are 24 strength, d6 +4 damage, I think I prefer the generators. There's dev wounds on there. There's a lot of attacks on there. It's got blast on top of that. Strength 10 is enough for me. Strength 24 is very luring, and it does make you think, oh, but it is only 2 shots with that. Well, 4 shots because you've got 2 of them. The melee side of the data card is also just as strong. With the Titanic Forelimbs, you've got either 6 attacks at strength 14, -3, 5 damage, or the sweep attack, 12 attacks, strength 8, -1 AP, 2 damage. That's pretty good. So you can force Battle Shock. Yeah, whatever, that's okay. You can move over models, excluding Titanic models, and terrain features that are 4 inches or less. You can move over them as if they weren't there as well. Pretty good. I mean, overall, I think I gave this a 4-star if I remember correctly. And yeah, I'm kind of sticking with that, but the A tier, effectively that's the same as a 4-star. I think all round it's an absolute beast. It's a walker on top of that, so it can be doing heroic interventions. It's towering, so it can be shooting at things, and even though they're behind cover, it doesn't matter. We've got towering. Yeah, an absolute menace on the battlefield. It's just a shame that it's 540 points, and of course it's Forge World. You're going to literally need to take out a mortgage to buy this thing, because I think it's like 200 and something pound. That doesn't even include all the weaponry that you want to customize if you were to do that as well. So yeah, that is in A tier, and the final A tier selection I've got is the Tomb Blades. Tomb Blades, I've had a bit of a mixed bag with the Tomb Blades this edition. Some games they're absolutely magic. They're absolutely magic, and in other games they've done absolutely nothing and they've gone down to a stiff breeze, literally. They're not, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. So 80 points for 3. They're still pretty quick, although they're not as quick as they used to be, but 12-inch movement. They've got Scout 9, so you can add that at the start of the game. Toughness 5, only 2 wounds and a 4+ armor, but it will go to a 3+, because the chances are you are going to be selecting the Shield Veins. Who's not going to select the Shield Veins as well as the Shadow Loom? So you've got 3+ armor, 5+ invuln. No one's selecting the Ignores cover option. Realistically, you may as well up your save, up your resiliency. It's a -1 to hit them, which is also nice. That's at range and in melee. I think in the previous edition it was just at range, but they don't seem to have that in that ability anymore. It's just -1 to the hit roll, which is nice. And you've got the options of your ranged weapons as you always did. You've got the particle beamers, which I think are the best option right now, because there's blast and dev wounds on there, d6 amount of shots per model, and it's hitting on 2s as well, which is odd because the rest of them do hit on 3s. The Twin Gauss Blaster and the Tesla Carbines are as they were. They're strength 5, they're doing a bit of work. But for me, it's all about the particle beamers. I've taken out Terminator units with these guys. With just a unit of 3 of these, I've taken Terminator units out because of Dev Wounds. Dev Wounds is so good. You could take a unit of 3 or you could take a unit of 6. I prefer to take them in 3s because I'm mainly using them for secondaries, realistically. I'm zipping them up the battlefield, getting onto an objective, just early doors, early rounds, or I'm using other secondaries such as Cleanse. Again, it's the same odd ones. It could be Engage on all fronts, Area Denial, all those kind of secondaries that either relate to doing a little action or getting into a certain location. These guys are your guys that could do that. Right, we're coming near to the end now. I say that there's still quite a lot to go, but we're on the S tier now. So S tier, I'm going to start off with the Canoptic Reanimator. Geez, this thing in 9th edition absolutely stank. I called it the bookend. It used to just hold up my codexes. Nowadays, it's S tier. It's amazing. You're getting an additional D3 in your reanimation protocols for all units within 12, and it is now all units because even the Transcendent Catan Shard is included in that because it gained the ability reanimation protocols. So you have one of these, maybe 2 in the larger games, floating around the battlefield, preferably behind terrain because they will get targeted. Everything's getting D3 additional reanimation. Necron Warriors, we've already kind of gone through how many ways of reanimating they've got. It's just so good. It's just so good. They're gonna stack with everything, whether it's Undying Legion stratagem, whether it's a Resurrection Orb, whether it's a Ghost Arc. As soon as you enact reanimation protocols, and this is within 12 inches, this ability will apply. Fantastic unit. Fairly cheap for what he does. And in terms of resiliency, it's okay. I mean, it is only toughness 6, 3 plus armor, 6 wounds, but it's got a 4 plus fear no pain save, which is actually literally just halving damage just instantly. I love that. That's on average, of course. The actual damage output, don't even look at it. It's not doing anything. Just take pot shots with it, of course. Take your shots, but realistically, you're not doing nothing with it. You need to be protecting these things because they'll be bringing your points back more than what you've actually spent on the Reanimator. So yeah, definitely an S tier. Get at least one of these. I know they're not easy to get because I got mine in the Indominus box set. I then got another one on eBay when they were crap. But nowadays they're quite difficult to get hold of unless you're buying the Royal, is it the Royal Warden? No, the Royal Corp kit. I think that's quite expensive and you're getting all these other models that you don't necessarily need. GW need to sort that out. They need to just sell this model as a unique model. You know, whack 20 quid on it, whatever, I don't care. But they would sell out, wouldn't they? But yeah, S tier for me, the Reanimator. Next we've got the Crypto Thralls. 40 points for the 2 crypto buckets. Yes, they took a slight nerf in the latest errata, but who cares? It was written poorly anyway, that ability, but that's not really what they're about. They're not about the damage, they're not about the standing up ability, the systematic vigor. Who cares about that? That's not what they're about. They're just about being, I would say meat shields, but they're made of metal. They're metal shields, effectively. You're adding 2 of these with a Cryptek, with your Warriors, with your Lich Guard or your Immortals. They've got the 4 plus Fear No Pain save, and they're also applying that Fear No Pain save to the Crypteks. So if you've got a Technomancer in there, the Technomancer's got it. If you've got an Orokin the Diviner in there, Orokin's got it as well. But these guys are the first guys that need to go when taking damage. If you're taking a load of damage from an enemy unit, the first guys you're rolling on are the Crypto Thralls, because they're literally going to have to take 8 damage just to kill them both, because they've got the 4 plus Fear No Pain save and all damage. That's a huge amount of work. I mean, again, if you whack them with 20 Necron Warriors, that's already in itself a disgusting unit to get rid of. By the way, they are just going to reanimate instantly when you've got the Ghost Arc, when you've got the Undying Legion stratagem, because these are now part of the bodyguard unit. That's the thing that people are getting a bit confused. They're not leaders, they're not leading, they just simply become part of the bodyguard unit, which it says it in the Cryptek retinue on the rear side of their data card. They become part of the bodyguard unit, and you increase the sight strength accordingly. So when you do roll for reanimation protocols, the first models that are coming back are these bad boys. So they come back up, your opponent has to then fight through these again. Now I've had warrior units that have been fighting against greater demons recently, and it doesn't matter who. It could be Meganobs with Grasgar, it could be Custodes. If you've got your Crypto Thralls in that unit, it's going to take them a turn just to get through the Crypto Thralls alone. Yes, you may lose a few extra models, you might lose 2 or 3, maybe it depends on the unit you're going up against, but you're going to lose some more models, but you're going to bring the Crypto Thralls back, and they've got to rinse and repeat. In order to take the entire unit, it's going to take them all game, unless they've got all the super stratagems and all the super buffs, the Guilliman, Oath of Moment, and they've attacked the warriors with 3 different units, then yeah, that's a whole different story, of course. But if it's like a 1 unit versus 1 unit kind of thing, it's going to take them a very long time, and by the time we've done all our reanimation protocols, the damage outcome for them will be almost nothing. So you just tie them up. Great unit. 40 points, by the way. 40 points. I don't care that they got the nerf to the ability. I was forgetting to use it anyway. It only really applies to Lich Guard. Yes, warriors can fight, we know that. But Lich Guards with the size are obviously the better option there. I think GW just kind of had to dumb down the power, because why would this be a unique ability? Getting to stand up a Crypto Throw on a 3+, and the Crypto Throw getting to fight back before actually being destroyed. I mean, the Crypto Throw's actual damage output in melee, 4 attacks, strength 5 minus 1 AP, 1 damage. If something's able to kill a Crypto Throw, then it's going to be pretty decent, and yeah, I'm not that bothered about that ability. The damage output isn't great for these guys, it doesn't matter, it's not about that, it's really not. But yeah, these are an auto include for me, auto include. In fact, they may, if I was to actually order these units, which I probably should have in hindsight, I wish I did now, the Crypto Throws would probably be the top unit in the entire index. Hexmark Destroyer next. I've only recently seen the power of the Hexmark Destroyer. I used to just think, it's okay, whatever. And a lot of people were saying to me, no, it's incredible. And it is. 70 points for a character that you can put enhancements on. You put the Sovereign Coronal on him, so +1 to hit aura for all round. Or you keep him cheap and you're going to be using him for deep strike and things like that. Why he's so good, first of all, he's got lone operative, so he can't be targeted unless you're within 12 inches, which again kind of stacks to that deep strike ability, because if you can get into behind enemy lines, right into one of your opponent's corners, and they've gone a little bit too far forward, they've got to come back to deal with him, which means you're pulling units back into their own deployment zone, which I like. You've then got the Inescapable Death ability, so you can basically Overwatch for free, even if you've already done it, and it's on a 2+, not a 6+. You've got precision with your weapons, in the disintegrator pistols have got precision, they can be fired into combat. In the tournament game that I played recently, I killed an apothecary, I deep struck this guy in, he did investigate signals, I think it was, and then he just kept shooting at an apothecary that was in a Hellblaster unit. Killed him within maybe 2 turns. He was done. Nice. His other ability, Multi-Threat Eliminator. Any unit that is targeted that's within 3 inches of the Hexmark Destroyer, including himself, you're going to be able to fire as if it was your shooting phase. Again, that could make you start shooting at a character or anything realistically with your 6 shots. But I love this guy. He's only cheap, and he can do so many different things. Again, you can be doing the scoring side of him, you could be doing the character assassinating side of him, you could be doing the buffing for your units. He's not going to be targeted that easily with lone operative. All round, he's a pretty decent option, and I like him. Next, we got some of my favourites, the Locust Heavy Destroyers. We did briefly touch upon them earlier in the video when we were talking about the Locust Lord. Now, the reason why the Locust Heavy Destroyers and the Lord aren't together is because the Ghost Destructors on their own are still pretty good. You don't necessarily need a Locust Lord for the Ghost Destructor weapons. I actually don't use the Locust Lord for the Destructors. I only use it for the Exterminators. And the Destructors now 48 inch range, so they've gone up in range. Strength 14, -4 AP, 6 damage. You're likely re-rolling 1s to wound because you're firing at the target you want to fire at, monsters and vehicles. And when you've got 3 of these, yes, it is only 3 shots. That is slightly the downside. It does have lethal hits and it has heavy, so you don't even need a Locust Lord in that aspect because you've got the +1 if you stay still. But if you do manage to get 1 or 2 of these to go through, 6 damage or 12 damage, you're doing a fair amount of work throughout the game. You're definitely going to be hurting vehicles, hurting monsters. I think they're good. I think they're cheap. Are they better than a Doomsday Arc? Yes and no. They're kind of on par for me. Some people prefer these, some people prefer the Doomsday Arc. I think they're on par. They've got slightly different tweaks. One's more resilient, one's more mobile. They're pretty much throwing out a lot of damage. Why not have both? Why not have both? Going down the list, we've got the Lich Guard. Lich Guard are definitely one of the better units within this S tier. You've got the options of the Swords and Shields, or you've got the options of the War Scythes. Now these guys are extremely good now. They're 95 points for 5, 190 for 10. For me, you always take them in 10s unless you're playing a weird list like I recently played. But you take them in 10s for reanimation protocols purposes, you take them with Cryptothralls, you take them with the Cryptech, and you take them with a Noble. You must have 2 characters in the unit with a unit of 10 and the Cryptothralls to be the most effective. And I'll tell you why. So first of all, we already know about the Cryptothralls, we just spoke about them. They're adding so much more resiliency, but in order to have Cryptothralls, you need a Cryptech. So you've got options. You've got Orokin the Diviner for the 4+ invulnerable save. That's when you're taking War Scythes because they've not got an invuln save. Or you're taking the Technomancers. Preferably I'd do this with Sword and Shields because they've already got an invuln save, so you don't need Orokin there. So having a 4+ invuln save and a 5+ Feel No Pain save, that stacks really nicely for resiliency. That way you unlock the Cryptothralls. Now as for the Noble, you need a Noble because of the ability they've got, Guardian Protocols. If you've got a Noble in the unit, it's a -1 to your enemy unit's wound rolls against the unit. That's a mega ability. Mega ability because these guys are toughness 5. Even if you've got a strength 9 weapon firing at these guys, they are going to still need 4s to wound. Simple as that. So yeah, definitely have a Necron Overlord potentially because you can use the free stratagem. But it could just be, well, ideally you want a Resurrection Orb in there just for added resiliency. It could be a Necron Lord with Orokin. It could be a Necron Overlord with a Technomancer maybe. You could use Imhotep the Stormlord, but you're not gaining the Resurrection Orb now, so I would stick to the Overlord or the Lord in this case. The weapon output is pretty good. You've got the Hyperface Swords, Strength 6 minus 2 AP, 1 damage. They're more for bunkering down on objectives and just kind of fending them off. They're okay against light infantry. The War Scythes have got Dev Wounds. They're Strength 8 minus 3 AP, 2 damage, much better as a weapon, but you now lose the invuln save because you've not got the shields anymore. So you really do need Orokin the Diviner if you're taking the War Scythes in my opinion. But yeah, these guys are extremely hard to get rid of. -1 to wound, add the Cryptothralls in there as well. Nasty unit. Ophidian Destroyers next. I've called these the MVPs of the index in terms of the secondaries anyway. These guys are rapid. Let's talk about the Ophidian Destroyers. Let's talk about the points to begin. They are 110 points for 3. Now, a lot of people are mixing this up. They're not really there for damage. People are saying, no, Scorpion Destroyers are better. Lich Guard are better. They're not about the damage this edition. If you want to play them for damage purposes, I think you're doing it wrong. They can do some work. They can use their weapons, Strength 4 minus 2 AP, 2 damage. Realistically, that's okay. It's not brilliant. What you need to be doing is looking at their Tunneling Horrors ability, where you can pop in and out every single turn. Let's just take a little scenario. You got your deck, you pull a card, and it says, deploy Teleport Homers. These guys, it's turn 2, these guys have got Deep Strike. They come in into your enemy's corner, behind a terrain feature, hopefully, and they do this action, deploy Teleport Homers, and you scored the points. Your opponent is now going to need to go back and deal with them, or ignore them. So already you've given your opponent a little bit of a problem. If they do get ignored, which chances are they might do, in your opponent's turn at the end of it, you pull them off the battlefield. That's what Tunneling Horrors is. They're back in Deep Strike again, they're back in reserves. And you can do this turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, even turn 5. It doesn't have to just be turn 2 and 3, because the Deep Strike rules are slightly different. Your next turn, you pull another card. It now says, Investigate Signal. Here we go again. You pop them back in, Investigate Signal, you pop them back out. So the next turn, it could just say, Engage on all fronts. You pop them back in again. At that point, they're probably going to die. Engage on all fronts is quite an open secondary, but you get my drift. They can be doing any card you got. If you go back to the video we did, you'll see virtually all of the objectives that are in that deck, apart from, Bring It Down, maybe Assassination, but pretty much all of them, they can score it. Now, if you were to get them into a fight, they're okay, as we mentioned. They've still got decent weapons. You can add Devastating Wounds because they've got a Plasma Sight in the unit. They're okay at it. They're okay. You can use the Hungry Void stratagem for a +1 to the strength if you wanted to. Strength 5 minus 2 AP, 2 damage. They're still doing a decent amount of work with 5 attacks each. They're okay. I just think you're better off trying to protect them and not get them into an actual fight. Try and resist the temptation of doing so. But for me, they're a good unit, and they're going to be an S tier unit for me. Orokin the Diviner is next, I believe is 80 points. I'm going to double check that. Now he's a great unit because he's going to be giving your unit a 4+ invulnerable save, 20 Necron Warriors with an invuln save, fantastic. 10 Lich Guards with the Scythes, having an invuln save, fantastic. He can also Hulk up, which is actually a bit of a game changer. People seem to forget the Stars Are Right ability. In all the old editions, it was a bit of a crap ability. It used to happen at the end of the game where it was not important. But now you do select when to use it. And in the fight phase, you're going to triple the amount of attacks, so that's going to go to 6 attacks. You're going to triple the strength, which is going to go to strength 12. And any successful wound roll is a critical wound. Bearing in mind he's got dev wounds. So if you've got strength 12 and you roll, let's say you need 2s to wound, and you've got 5 attacks that go through, and you roll all 5 of them are 2s. They will turn into critical wounds because they are wound rolls. That's what the ability says. And they all of a sudden will become dev wounds. So therefore there's no armor save, there's no in-run save. They're all mortal wounds, and it's D3 each time. Each one of those that went through is D3 mortal wounds. So it's a nasty ability when you pull it off. It is only once per battle, of course, but it is great. He is an epic hero, so he can't be taken an enhancement. He can take crypto throws though, because he is a cryptic, which is definitely a massive bonus. But yeah, realistically, you're using Necron warriors or Lich Guard with the scythes. Next, we've got the Overlord. This is my preferred go-to DIY character, if you like. The Necron Overlord. We already kind of spoke about him briefly when we were talking about Imitate the Stormlord, but this guy's got Mine Will Be Done. So you're going to use a stratagem on the unit he's leading for free, even if you've already used it that turn or that phase, sorry. So that could be the Vengeful Star stratagem, could be Undying Legions, could be a CP reroll, whatever you want really. He is customizable with his weapon, so you could take the Void Scythe or the Overlord's Blade. They're 2 of the melee options. You've got the Staff of Light as well, but I think that one stinks. I would always take the Void Scythe. It's only 3 attacks, but it's strength 12 minus 3 AP, 3 damage. Necron characters aren't necessarily the best in melee anyway. You just don't have enough attacks in my opinion. You've got the -1 to damage for being an Overlord. You're going to be leading Immortals, Lich Guard or Warriors. So again, it's a bit of a take your pick there. If you're going with Lich Guard, I go with the Technomancer. You don't need Orokin in my opinion because he's already got the Int-1 save, so he doesn't necessarily need that. But what's great about the Overlord is the Resurrection Orb, of course. Having that Resurrection Orb in your opponent's command phase, you're popping that orb, even after a nasty fight phase in your own turn, bang. You're bringing models back just in time for a new round of fighting, I guess. So that adds a little bit more resiliency, especially when you're combining, again, Ghost Arcs, Reanimator, all those kind of things. Being on an objective, so it's D3 plus 3 rather than D6 on your warriors. And of course, if you've got Crypto Thralls in those units, you're bringing those Crypto Thralls back. They're huge, they're so big. He is of course a noble, so that's going to aid the Lich Guard for that -1. It's going to aid the Lich Guard for the -1 to wound roll as well. So yeah, Overlord for me is just an all-round great unit to have, a great leader to have. He's fitting all 3 of those units perfectly fine. The only downside to having any type of leader really, not just the Overlord, is the Epic Challenge stratagem, which I really hate that stratagem this edition because you can't just hide him in 20 Necron Warriors or 10 Lich Guard because your opponent can just come up, Epic Challenge, allocate the wounds onto your Overlord, and bang, you could lose your Overlord. Okay, you've got the Eternal Guardian stratagem to get back up again, but it is kind of a risky one because you've already used it. You can only use it once per game on every character. So it's an easy way for our characters to die, but I don't think they're too expensive, to be honest. What is the price of an Overlord at this moment? 85 points. I think that's reasonably good. And I would have them in every list. Auto include for me. 3 more to go. The Technomancer is next. We've kind of spoke a little bit about the Technomancer as well. Technomancer is giving the 5+ Feel No Pain save to the entire unit. So again, let's look at those warriors. 20 warriors, all of them with Feel No Pain. That's madness. You can have Lich Guard, all of them with Feel No Pain. Whether it's the shield, whether it's the war size, all with Feel No Pain. Immortals are the same. He's another character that can of course take enhancements because he's just a character, not an epic hero. And he's also going to be healing a unit within 3 inches D3 lost wounds. Doesn't necessarily have to be leading that unit. So it could be your Reanimator, potentially. It could be a Ghost Arc. 2 other abilities he's got, which I find them quite strange, but they are what they are. The Canoptic Cloak, you're giving him Lone Operative, Movement of 10 and Fly. So he's not going to be leading a unit, he's going to be on his own. He doesn't have to be, he can still be leading a unit. So when he does go solo, if the unit does die, which it won't, he can have all these, he can have the Lone Operative ability, but you could start him off potentially in the Ghost Arc. But he then can't go into the unit given the 5+ Feel No Pain save. So really you're only bringing him for an additional model to be filling the Ghost Arc for an infantry character. You could just use a Hexmark Destroyer, I think that's just a better option. The other option is the Canoptic Control Node Aura for Canoptic units within 6 inches to get a +1 to their hit roll. It's effectively like having the Sovereign Coronal, but for free. You're not paying 30 points for it, but it's only working on Canoptic units, which aren't A tier. There aren't really any Canoptic units in this tier group that are dealing out damage. You've got the Reanimator, which is Canoptic. That's literally it. That's not dealing out any damage at all, is it? So a +1 to the hit roll. You're talking about spiders, you're talking about wraiths, you're talking about scarabs, sentinel and tombstalker. In fact, there is one more. There's the doomstalker, of course. So you could have the doomstalker in there. Yeah, that does work with lone up, but you're not. The thing is, there is at that point you need lone operative, because if you're not within those units, you're not leading them, you could be targeted, and the lone operative ability only comes with a Canoptic cloak. So I wish they just meshed these together. It would be kind of cool. But you'd have to hide him behind terrain if you were to use the Canoptic Control Node, because he's just going to get picked off. But other than that, the 5+ Funa Pain Save I think is a magical ability. Having an extra layer of a save is something that I had to take a while to get my head around. I couldn't work out if Orokin was better than the Technomancer. Overall, I do think the Technomancer is better. Orokin does give a 4+ save, which is a better save, but it is effectively overwriting your armor save. Whereas a Feel No Pain save doesn't overwrite the armor save, it's an additional save. So if you've got, let's say you've got Immortals with a 3+ armor and it's -2 AP, which puts them to a 5+ armor. Yes, you would have a 4+ invulnerable save with Orokin, but with a Technomancer you've got a 5+ armor save and then a 5+ Feel No Pain save. So you've got 2 bites at the cherry there, whereas Orokin you've only got 1. So I prefer the Feel No Pain. There's not much between them, don't get me wrong, maybe it's just a preference thing here. I think the Technomancer is better, and he is in virtually every list. Another one which is an auto-include for me is the Transcendent Catan. Wow, this guy is an absolute menace. We've done the video for this already, and since doing that video he has now got reanimation protocols, which makes it even more stupidly good. He's insane. He is insane. So let's have a little chat about the Transcendent. It's 280 points. 280 points well spent, trust me. Resiliency is where it's at. He's an app. He can't be removed. He's so tough. So toughness 11. That's not massively tough, but wait for it. Toughness 11, 4+ armor, 4+ invuln, 12 wounds. That so far is quite standard, right? You've got the Necrodermis ability, so you're going to be halving the damage. You then whack on the enhancement because it's not an epic hero. So you whack on the Sempternal Weave, which is a 4+ Feel No Pain save. Let's go back a step. Let's say we've got 6 damage 4 weapons that have come through. Instantly they're damage 2 now. So we've halved it, right? So they're damage 2, we've got 6 of them. We've got an invuln save to make. On average you're going to get 3 of those to be successful rolls on 4+. So those 6 goes to 3. So you've now got 3 dice to deal with, right? Each one of those was 4 damage, is now 2 damage. That is a total combination of 6 damage. 6 damage in total you've got to deal with. You've still got your Feel No Pain save. So you roll your Feel No Pain save, on average you're going to get 3 of them to be successful. Overall, after all said and done, you're only taking 3 damage. Bear in mind that there was 6 damage 4 rolls that went through that rolled to hit and rolled to wound. 6 damage 4 weapons, and all they've done is 3 damage in total. And guess what? Reanimation protocols is just about to come around the corner. So D3 of that is coming straight back, potentially D3 and another D3 if there's a reanimator there. There probably won't be, but what I'm trying to get at here is to take out 12 wounds. Toughness 11 by the way, so you need the big guns to do it. You can't just do it with the bolt guns, it's not going to work. Toughness 11 with 12 wounds that keep coming back in terms of reanimation. Epic. Is epic. He's not getting killed, he's just really not. I've said it a few times and I will hold this as a bit of a trophy this edition. I was charged with a Bellicor and I was charged with a Keeper of Secrets all in one fight phase. Put it this way, the Transcendent Catan beat them both. And I'd barely lost any wounds. 1 Bellicor gone, 1 Keeper of Secrets gone. Epic. And we're not even really broke into his datasheet, that's just the resiliency side. Deep Strike, great. Every time you advance, you're basically doing a Veil of Darkness relic, but in your own movement phase. As soon as you advance, you go 9 inches away from enemy models. you can still shoot because your range attack, the Seismic Assault, has the assault keyword, so advancing and still shooting is okay. Bang. Strength 8 minus 2 AP, D3 damage with 6 attacks. Yes, please. You've then got the melee side of the actual profile, which you can't be doing after the trans-dimensional displacement ability. You can't be doing it then. But if you do get into a fight, you've got 8 attacks with sustained hits 1, so you're likely just going to get your 8 attacks. Web skill 2+, strength 9, minus 3 AP, D6 damage, so it's punching stuff. It's absolutely punching stuff. Mega unit. The problem I've got with it is not so much an in-game problem, it's getting hold of one. You need to buy the Tesseract Bolt in order to get one, which I can't remember what it costs. It's £100+ in the UK. You do get an obelisk with it, which at this moment stinks, or you're going to have to build the Bolt, which also stinks. So they're effectively making us pay £100+ for one Transcendent Catan. Don't like that at all, GW, sort it out. Okay, so we're now on to our final one, which is the Necron Warriors. We've mentioned them quite a number of times this edition. Very similar to the Transcendent Catan and very similar to the Lich Guard. They are very, very difficult to shift. If your opponent is not equipped enough stuff to deal with them, they're not going to die. I wish I took these to the tournament. They were in my original first list. I was going to go with two bricks of 20 with the Crypto Thralls and the Technomancers. I thought it was a bit boring. I wanted to have a little bit more fun. I wish I just took these because I would have probably won. These guys would not have been shifted. When you've got 20 wounds and you've got the Crypto Thralls, you're going to have to take 8 wounds to shift them because of the Fear and Pains. You've got the Technomancer and an Overlord in there. They're not doing a massive amount of damage even though they've got lethal hits. Doesn't matter. You just spread them out in the board as long as they're within coherency, of course. Get onto 1 or 2 objectives per unit. You've got a Reanimator nearby hiding behind terrain. You've got the Overlord in there for the free stratagem use of Undying Legions or Mental Stars. You've then got the Ghost Arc. You've got a Resurrection Orb as well held by the Overlord. And they're just not dying. They just keep coming back. They keep coming back. D6 come back every single command phase, or D3+3 if you're on an objective, which you should be. They just literally clutter the battlefield. It's almost like having a horde unit. You just throw them all over the place. Toughness 4, 4+ armor, doesn't matter. Let them go, they'll come back up. Let them die, they'll come back up. It's fine. As long as you've got the objectives, that's the main thing. Even if you're foregoing your shooting just to do the actions, do it. It doesn't matter. The Ghost Reapers, the Ghost Flayers, they're not doing a ton of work, but it's all about taking board control, and your opponent has to either fire everything into it and still won't do it, or they have to have a mega unit that's specifically there to deal with warriors. Again, you can wipe them out with certain units, but a lot of the time you'll find your opponent doesn't have that unit to deal with them. They've got to do it unit at a time, and as soon as one unit's ended the firing or their melee attacks, Protocol of Undying Legion stratagem. Then they start doing it again, Ghost Arc. But, well, you do it the other way around supposedly, but you've got your Ghost Arc, you've got the Undying Legion stratagem. That's twice where your opponent has had to hit them with a certain, do a lot of damage. You want to be using the stratagem or the Ghost Arc when you're losing about, for me, it's when I sort of lose around 6 or 7, that's when I go, right, I'll do one now. If I lose 1 or 2, I'll just wait. I'll just wait it out. Because they're going to come back anyway. 1 or 2 will just come back in your own turn, or your opponent's turn with the Resurrection Orb. So I don't need to do it just then. I'll wait until around 6 or 7 have gone, bring them back. On average, if you're on an objective with a Reanimator, let's work this out. D3+3, that's 5 as an average. The Reanimator as an average is another 2. So right there, you've got 7. It's arguable whether you can get the +1 from the leader if you're using the stratagem. I don't think you can. Maybe you can, I'm not entirely sure anymore, but I don't bother. You don't need it, so I don't really care about it. You're getting 7 back. That's roughly when I use it. That's just the once. In fact, that's the Ghost Arc. That's not the stratagem. Your opponent takes 7 more, stratagem. So now you've actually, in total, would have lost, say, 14 models, and you've still got a full unit. And bearing in mind the Crypto Thralls are the ones that are going, so that's going to take 8 wounds just to get rid of the Crypto Thralls alone. Your opponent has to throw so much at it. But yeah, these guys are an absolute S tier for me. I prefer them over Immortals, and I think they're on par with Lich Guard because you've got the Ghost Arc. I know that is more of an expense, and they are definitely more expensive than Lich Guard. They're 240 points for a 20-man unit. Lich Guard are 190 for 10. You then have to bring the characters in for both units, the reanimators there for both units, the ghost arcs for the warriors. When you get all the things combined, you're looking at like 500 points, but some of that stuff would apply to the Lich Guard. But yeah, warriors for me, massive, massive unit. Right, so we've come to the end of the tier list, guys. If I've missed any units out, you'll have to let me know, and I'll put a pinned comment up. But guys, don't forget to subscribe on your exits. Don't forget also there's timestamps at the bottom, so you can come back and maybe get this on your bookmark, so you can come back, return to it, and see where these guys are. But yeah, thank you all for watching, guys. See you in the next one.